Chapter 1184. Now that I think about it, when I challenged Mr. Jing, he was the one who chose the table, but against a third-rate opponent. I don't think he needed to cheat. Gold-faced Scowl thought to himself. When I challenged him, I didn't think about changing the table. But now that I think about it, including this match, he has already fought 3 matches on the same table. He looked at the referee's meticulous and expressionless face, half of which was covered by a pair of sunglasses. Then, he looked at his brother Ju. When he issued the initial challenge, although he seemed to have casually chosen the table closest to him, at the end of the day, isn't it up to him to decide where to stand? In other words, the actual situation is very likely that he found the one he bribed among the many referees and deliberately wandered to the table near the referee's table before issuing the challenge. The more Gold-faced Scowl thought about it, the more he felt that his reasoning was sound. He used the straw to pick the challenger in a dramatic way to cover up this fact. At that time, when no one was willing to challenge him, his action undoubtedly made the people around him marvel at the fact that he could even randomly choose his opponent. Because of this, they neglected the fact that he chose the table and the fact that he probably didn't choose the table randomly. Beep, beep, beep. Just as Gold-faced Scowl was deep in thought, a series of rapid beeps interrupted his train of thought. The time limit for feedback is up, sir. The referee's cold voice rang out. The penalty for exceeding the time limit is 1% of the maximum amount of gold you have at the start of the match. In addition, the next 30-second countdown will start immediately. As he spoke, he looked at Gold-faced Scowl and pointed at the timer. The next time, the penalty will be 2%. Please take note. At this moment, Gold-faced Scowl realized that he had wasted too much time thinking. For the first time in his life, he felt that he didn't have enough time to think. This was a situation that he had never encountered before. Gold-faced Scowl was a very outstanding person, a true elite in the truest sense of the word. His family was not wealthy, but they were quite well off. He had never attended a public school since he was young, but he was outstanding in any group. She had top-notch academic results, top-notch athletic ability, and even an innate advantage in terms of looks. When he was still a student, he had always been associated with the words cadre, representative, special student, and so on. Or, to put it more directly, he was the legendary other people's child. Before he graduated from university, he had received an offer from a well-known company and became the youngest senior manager in the company's history in the 6th year after he entered the company. He was the standard winner in life. He almost didn't know what setbacks were because he never failed. To be praised and to win victories was a matter of course to him, and he was perfectly happy to bask in the envious and admiring gazes of others. In his opinion, those mediocre people who appeared in his life were all unremarkable extras, and he was like the main character of this world. Until he was 32 years old. A month ago, Goldface had a disagreement with his superior on a certain project. Arrogant to the point of being obstinate, he chose to ignore his superior's advice and forcefully carried out his decision. In the end, he failed miserably and caused a huge loss. Even if he went bankrupt, he wouldn't be able to fill this gap by himself. However, if he could get an 8-figure sum of liquid funds, then he would have ways to mediate and remedy the situation. At least for a long time, no one would find out about his actions. Therefore, he appeared on this ship today. He thought that he was the main character here, as usual. However, the nightmarish reality gradually woke up this person who had not experienced the ups and downs of life. And the name of the main character was Feng Bujue. Hurry up and write. Brother Ju saw that Goldface was still hesitating, so he smiled and pressured him. What? Do you think $1,000 is not enough? If you exceed the time limit, it will be $2,000. I protest. Gold Countenance suddenly turned and shouted at the organizer on the second-floor railing. His shout not only attracted the attention of the organizer, but also attracted the attention of many people in the main hall. Huh! The organizer opened his mouth and exhaled. Then, he stood up and looked at Goldface. What are you protesting about? Your people were bribed by him. They cheated together. Goldface shouted at the organizer as he raised his hand and pointed at the man in the suit and Brother Ju. When he said this, The referee was stunned and did not know how to react. Ha! After Fong Bujue heard this, he spread his hands and laughed. Look at you, tattling to the teacher. TSK, TSK, TSK. This time, his ridicule did not have any practical meaning, but he liked it. My people were bribed by him? 2 seconds later, the organizer replied with a smile. Why do you say that? Do you have any evidence? Here's the evidence. Gold-faced Scowl shouted with certainty, raising the paper in his hand. What's wrong with this paper? The organizer asked. He guessed 1A5B in the first round. Gold-face replied with a frown. Oh, the organizer responded weakly. So? Gold-face's tone changed. So they must have colluded to cheat. Ha. After hearing this, the organizer shook his head and laughed dryly. Almost at the same time, Fong Bujua laughed in the same way. What are you laughing at? Goldface sensed that the atmosphere was not right, and his voice lowered. Who made the rule that we can't guess 1A5B in the first round? The organizer asked. And who made the decision? If he guessed 1A5B in the first round, he must have cheated? Fong Bujua asked. Ridiculous! Goldface shouted. If he didn't cheat, how could he guess all 6 numbers in the first round? Then, did you see through his technique? The organizer asked. Goldface didn't answer the question directly. His technique is to cooperate with the referee. The referee must be somewhere I can't see. For example, in a blind spot. He must have told the man the numbers through hand gestures or secret signals. As soon as this was said, the referee instinctively wanted to defend himself. However, after looking up at the organizer, he swallowed his words in the end. He knew that in front of the organizer, defending himself was superfluous. Defending himself was a form of questioning the organizer. No, he didn't, the organizer said. As he spoke, he fiddled with the tablet in his hand a few times. He pulled up the surveillance footage of Fong Bujue and Goldface's table and played it in fast forward. From the footage captured by this camera, it could be seen that he didn't move at all. His hands, feet, shoulders, they were all very stable. He didn't even move his lips or fingers. Goldface saw this and said, the man with the crow must have cheated in some other way. Either the referee didn't see it, or he was bribed by him. He pretended not to see it. Phew! The organizer exhaled again, picked up the mystery drink next to him, and took a sip. Let me organize my thoughts. He paused. You accuse my man of cheating, but you have no evidence at all, and you can't tell me the exact method. The only thing you can rely on is the answer that the man gave in the first round. Even Goldface could tell that he was in the wrong. He hurriedly said, No, there are many other signs. He pointed at Fong Bujua. When I just finished writing the answer, he said something like, I see, it's these numbers. And he only announced it for 7 rounds. These are all signs of cheating. Signs? The organizer sneered. That's an interesting way to put it. He looked at Brother Jew and asked, Mr. Crow, how do you explain this? Psychological warfare. Fong Bujue replied succinctly. You heard it. The organizer asked Goldface again. Goldface did not know what else to say. After all, he had no evidence, and that was his biggest weakness. However, Goldface did not wish for the match to continue because he was certain that Brother Jew had cheated. Taking a step back, even if Brother Jew did not cheat, 1 round was already 1A5B, so the chance of him getting the answer within 7 rounds was very high. In other words, Goldface would not be able to last until the 8th round before surrendering. Once he lost that 100,000 bet, he would be eliminated directly. Then this round does not count. Goldface said, I want a new round, and I want a new referee, he said to the organizer. What do you think? In order to prove the fairness of the duel, I don't think you will refuse. Okay, I got it. The organizer interrupted him and said to Manby, let's do it. Yes, young master. Suit Big Manby responded. Before he could finish his sentence, the man, who was almost 2 meters tall, jumped over the railing on the 2nd floor. He was like a ferocious tiger descending from the mountain or a dragon diving into the sea. After landing with a loud crash, The man rushed to Brother Jew's cart and grabbed Goldface's shoulder with one hand. Ah! Goldface Scowl screamed in pain. But before he could shout out the second syllable, he was pressed to the ground by the other party's skillful and forceful grappling technique. "You? What are you doing?" Goldface, whose mask was pressed against the ground, shouted. He tried to resist, but found that he was completely immobilized, as if he was being stepped on by an elephant. "You have lost completely," Manby said. "Come with me and get out of here." "What? What nonsense are you talking about?" Goldface shouted even louder. "Organizer, what's going on? Please explain. Are you kidding me?" At this time, the organizer had sat down again and was playing with his tablet leisurely. "You're asking me what's going on? Don't you know the rules of the gambling table?" "What? What rules?" Goldface asked with difficulty. "The rules are..." At this time, Fong Bujue replaced the organizer and said to Goldface, "The cheater will have his hands and feet chopped off, and the heaviest punishment will be his life." When Goldface heard this, he was furious. I didn't cheat. It was clearly you. Without any evidence, it's the same to accuse the other party of cheating." The next second, the organizer said, "Why don't you think about it? If what you said was true, how will my men be treated?" He raised his finger and pointed at the judge. The world of gambling is not the kind of place where you can point at someone's nose and shout that they are cheating while you can stay out of it. He shook his head. "You don't have conclusive evidence. You don't have the ability to catch people in the act, and you don't have the awareness to bear the consequences. How dare you say that the other party must have cheated?" Bang! The organizer immediately slapped the railing in front of him and shouted in a stern tone for the first time, "Do you think this is a kindergarten's playroom? How dare you ask for a rematch? You want me to prove the fairness of the duel?" He waved his arm and pointed. "If it weren't for the presence of a lady, I would have gotten someone to beat the shit out of you 2 minutes ago." He paused for half a second and shouted at Manby. "He signed a protection contract, didn't he? Drag him out of here immediately." "Yes." Manby took the order and moved his knee away from Gold Mask Scowl's spine. He lifted him up and walked away. "No, no." At this moment, Gold Mask Scowl was finally scared, but begging for mercy was undoubtedly too late. Unexpectedly, at this moment, Fong Bujua suddenly spoke, trying to call Manby. "Wait." But Manby ignored Brother Jew, as if he didn't hear him at all. He used his steel-like arm to drag Gold Mask Scowl out of the room. "Wait." 2 seconds later, the organizer spoke again. This time, Manby stopped. "Mr. Crow, do you have anything else to say?" the organizer asked. No, I just have a few words to say to Gold Mask Scowl," Fong Bujua said as he walked up to Gold Mask Scowl. Gold Mask Scowl's expression was almost the same as the mask he was wearing. Mr. Crow," Gold Mask Scowl sobbed and said to Brother Jew, "Please help me. I'll give you 50,000. Brother Jew ignored Gold Mask Scowl's pleading and said, "Do you want to know how I was able to guess 1A and 5B in the first round?" Gold Mask Scowl was stunned by the question. He replied blankly, "Why? Actually, it's very simple." Fong Bujua said, "I guessed it. That's impossible." Gold Mask Scowl replied almost instinctively, "No, it's very easy." Brother Jew said, "First of all, you must have written 1. This is what I saw, because when you wrote 1, the movement of the pen was very obvious. I was sure that there was a 1 in the answer. Secondly, you must have written 8 and 9 because you know that my habit of guessing is to start from 6 zeros. If the answer didn't contain 8 and 9, it would have saved me a round. At least, before I made the declaration of 7 rounds, your idea was reasonable. Then it was just a simple guess. Due to my work, I've done a lot of research on puzzle solving. I once saw it in a document from the 1990s. When people write random numbers, the most common 3 numbers are 3, 5, and 8. Although I wasn't sure about the reliability of the document, it was just a guess anyway. There was no need for me to be sure of anything. Besides, when I was dueling with Mr. Jing, he wrote these 3 numbers as well. In a sense, it was also a kind of proof. In short, up until now, I had the 5 numbers 1, 3, 5, 8, 9. Then, I thought about the repetition number. Adding a repetition number would make the answer more confusing. You know this very well, so I thought that you wouldn't let it go. So, which repetition number would it be? Based on my guessing sequence, it would be best to choose 9. This would ensure that I wouldn't get all 6 numbers until the 9th round. So, I wrote 1, 3, 5, 8, 9, 9. That's how the answer came to be. No, Gold Mask Scowl stammered. No, you lied to me. It can't be so coincidental. The reason for guessing 1, 8, 9, and 9 is still valid, but 3 and 5? He swallowed hard. The way you guessed, the probability of guessing more than 4 is very high. But if you guessed all of them, I didn't plan to get all of them right. Phone Bujue said, my original plan was to guess 4 to 5 numbers in the first round. As long as I could do that, my plan would be a success. This sentence was like a sharp arrow that pierced through Gold Mask Scowl's heart, causing the blood in his body to stop flowing. You didn't plan to finish this round. Gold Mask Scowl muttered after thinking for a few seconds. You finally understand, Phone Bujue replied calmly. As I said before, you're a second-rate. The difference between a third-rate and a second-rate is that the former is too weak, while the latter is self-righteous. Therefore, compared to a third-rate, it's easier for a second-rate to be implanted with ideas. He shrugged. To tell you the truth, I never planned to cheat. I just gave you the impression that I must have cheated through my previous performances. In a moment of desperation, you reacted as if you were seeking death. When Gold Mask Scowl heard this, he realized something. Could it be? When you were playing against Mr. Jing, you were already... Yes. Brother Ju smiled. At that time, I had already completed my plan. I asked the referee about my cheating in front of everyone because I considered that in the following rounds, I might meet some opponents who were very good in the field of calculation. At that time, I buried the shadow in my opponent's heart that as long as I didn't get caught cheating, I would be able to pass safely. This shadow became an invincible blade in my psychological warfare. Shock, despair, fear, and unwillingness, Phone Bujue's idea flowed quietly in the air. He made Gold Mask Scowl experience a complicated and indescribable sense of defeat. After a moment of silence, Gold Mask Scowl spoke again. One day I will be back, whether it's 5 years or 10 years. I will pay off my debt and make a comeback. When the time comes, I will make a comeback to you at the gambling table. Humph! How naive! Phone Bujue sneered and interrupted him. One day, make a comeback? Ha! People who say such things when they're defeated will only gradually get used to failure. As he spoke, he put his hands in his pockets and took 2 steps back. It's the same mentality you had when you came to challenge me. Because I'm not sure if I can still have the upper hand in the next game, I want to get rid of the potential strong opponent in this round first. At first, it sounds reasonable, but the world of gambling has never been reasonable. People lose everything and even die for inexplicable reasons. This is gambling, your level of calculation. This kind of plan to put yourself in a safe situation as soon as possible won't work here. Not only will it not work, but it will also lead you to your own destruction. At this point, Phone Bujue had already turned around and walked away slowly. You haven't really sat on the gambling table yet, but you are full of confidence and want to win. This is ridiculous. You should go back to the field you are familiar with and pay for the other mistakes in your life. Chapter 1185. Advantage. After 2 matches, Phone Bujue gained a huge advantage that others couldn't match. Goldface's complete defeat increased Brother Ju's funds to more than 200,000 USD. Plus, he already had challenge immunity. In short, in the following time, Phone Bujue could reject other people's challenges, and he could still challenge those who hadn't finished 2 matches, and the other party couldn't refuse. At this moment, Brother Ju's other strategy began to show results. Just as Goldface said, the key to winning the 2 matches with Mr. Jing wasn't how much he won, but the time and number of matches. It wasn't difficult to win Mr. Jing's money, but it wasn't easy to win more than 50,000 USD from a person with such a personality. Instead of being entangled with him, it was better to end the match quickly and use him to exhaust the number of matches. After that match, Phone Bujue seemed to only gain about 2,000 USD But in fact, he gained much more than that. Putting aside the influence he had on the people around him on a conscious level, the most direct advantage he had was time. A duel would take time. Not everyone had lightning-fast mental calculation speed and accurate mental deduction ability. In this game, most people had to use pen and paper to do their calculations, and some people had to spend a lot of time even if they used pen and paper to do their calculations. Therefore, when Feng Bujue finished 3 matches at an extremely fast speed, most people in the main hall hadn't even finished the first match. And most people, from this moment on, had all become lambs waiting to be slaughtered in Brother Ju's eyes. With a financial advantage and immunity, he could pick anyone to win money, and the other party didn't even have the right to refuse. Even if the worst-case scenario was that everyone Brother Ju met had the computing power of Gold Face, and they all chose to surrender in the 10th round of the first match, and Feng Bujue didn't play any tricks, such as increasing the opponent's penalty in the 10th round, Brother Ju could still win 5,000 USD in the first match. Then, he would play the second match with the opponent who had been further weakened. Assuming the worst-case scenario, for example, the opponent still had more than 100,000 USD in the second match, and Brother Ju also chose to surrender in the 10th round. Even so, Feng Bujue could still win more than 1,000 USD in the end. Of course, this kind of assumption was impossible. First of all, it was impossible for Feng Bujue to not play any tricks. Secondly, as mentioned earlier, Goldface was the fish that escaped the net. Among the hundreds of people, there was no other Goldface. There were people who didn't see through the escape round, people who lost in the first match and had their funds reduced, people who only borrowed 50 to 60,000 USD in the beginning, and people like Mr. Jing. These people were the mainstream, and they were the most people. These people were destined to fall into the abyss of guessing the numbers. There were only a handful of survivors who could progress to the second game. For example, those who had already made their move when Brother Ju and Mr. Jing finished guessing the first game. Now, these people had basically finished guessing the first game as well, even though they had made their move initially because they realized the advantage of the challenger. During the process of their duel, they had also realized the importance of time and immunity. Therefore, they sped up. They would rather sacrifice some money to grab some precious time. Once they met the 2 conditions of completing 2 rounds and having more funds than half of the people in the venue, they would officially become the hunters. On this basis, they would hunt down the prey who had less funds than them. This was the basic strategy of this guessing the numbers game. It was 10 o'clock at night. The guessing the numbers game had been going on for almost 2 hours. There were still 2 hours before the deadline of midnight. At this moment, the good show that the organizer had hoped to see finally began. Are you kidding me? Get out of my way. Please, I beg you. Didn't we have a good chat just now? Aren't we friends? Who's your friend? I don't even know your face and name. I just said a few words to you. Who would lend you money because of that? Please, I was careless before. Now I know the way to win. As long as you give me 30,000. No, 20,000. Go away. So what if you know now? There's no one left to challenge. This is a competition that could end with a penny less. If I lend you the money, not only will you not be able to make a comeback, but I will also be buried with you. Similar conversations were happening all over the venue. They were all captured by cameras and sent to the tablet in the hands of the organizer. When the feeling of despair was within reach, step by step, gradually closing, and more than 90% of people would begin to self-destruct. Wealth, status, reputation, dignity. People would gradually remove the shell that they had accumulated in society to protect themselves, and then reveal their fragile, ugly, and absurd nature. For people who had nothing to begin with, this might be easier, but for the guests invited by the organizer, this was no less painful than death. Ha ha ha, ha ha, ha ha. Finally, the organizer laughed. It's here. This is the best form of entertainment. He used his hands as a pillow and leaned back comfortably in his chair. At this moment, his tablet had been handed over to Suitman A. This big brother was kneeling on one knee, like a human frame, helping the organizer hold the tablet. He held it motionlessly. More, let me see more. Under the mask, The eyes of the organizer were filled with excitement and joy. He muttered to himself softly, "Men, women, the rich, the powerful, the elite," in order to get away from the abyss at their feet, to grab the last glimmer of hope. Everyone eventually became rascals. He picked up the drink beside him and took a sip. He smiled and continued, kneeling cheaply, begging humbly, making empty promises, thinking in self-deception, selling one's body, abandoning one's dignity, losing one's rationality, going insane. Ha! He laughed for a while and exclaimed, "That's super awesome, young master." Suitman B, who returned to the organizer after dealing with Golden Face, came over with a walkie-talkie. He leaned over and said to the organizer, "A report has just come in. Except for some people who were taken away directly because of cheating or mental breakdown, more than 200 people in the venue have been exempted from the challenge." "Oh," the organizer responded and said, in other words, "It's time to enter the next stage." 5 minutes later, the door of the main hall opened again. Then a few men in suits and sunglasses pushed in a flat-screen TV with a large screen. They pushed the TV all the way to the organizer's railing, then lifted it and moved it to a conspicuous marble platform. At the same time, the organizer stood up from his chair and stood by the railing. At this time, there was no one still fighting on the first floor of the main hall, so the organizer's move immediately attracted the attention of all the guests. Everyone. After the crowd quieted down, the organizer spoke. "It seems that everyone has completed more than 2 matches and no longer wishes to be the party being challenged." He paused for a moment and laughed mockingly. "Ha! But is this really all right?" Before he finished speaking, the flat-screen TV lit up. The expressions of the guests under their masks also changed significantly at this moment. It turned out that the thing printed on the TV was none other than the thing that everyone was most interested in at the moment, the player holding the gold ranking. Considering that all the guests were wearing masks and did not know each other's names, the ranking board used a profile picture. Every person on the list was shown as a still photo of their head from their collarbones to their head, with a sum of money written next to it. As you can see, the organizer waited for a few seconds before continuing. "This is a funding ranking. This ranking will instantly show the leading 72 players. In order to prevent everyone's avatars from being too small to be recognized, only 24 people will be displayed on one screen. The list will be displayed on 3 scrolling screens." He spread out his hands. "Anyway, I just want to confirm with everyone. Is this really okay? If everyone doesn't fight anymore, then other than the 64 people at the top of this ranking, the rest of the people will..." Even if you say that, at this moment, someone in the crowd interrupted the organizer. "Everyone knows that the challenge party is at a disadvantage, so no one will accept the challenge anymore." Yeah. If no one wants to be the challenge party, the duel won't work. There's something wrong with your rules. Yeah, change the rules. 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 At this point, those who had been forced into a desperate situation were no longer polite to the organizers. They all began to shout and quickly shouted in unison to change the rules, wanting to rely on this public voice to fight for their own benefits. The organizer was silent for a few seconds. Then he took a deep breath and shouted, "Shut up, a bunch of scum." This shout was like a clap of thunder, and it was so imposing that it stunned the crowd and silenced them. "Phew!" After the organizer shouted, he exhaled and said, "Since I took the initiative to stand here and speak again, it naturally means that I'm going to make some adjustments to the rules." He paused for half a second. "But don't be mistaken. This adjustment is not because there's something wrong with the rules. If there's something wrong with the rules, you should have raised it at the beginning of the game. If what you said made sense, I might have accepted it. However, you didn't say anything at that time, until now, because of your own incompetence, lack of wisdom, and lack of courage. You're lagging behind others. Now you're coming together to question the rules. Scoundrels, stinking bugs, disgusting maggots." The organizer shouted, slightly forgetting himself. He raised his hand and pointed at a few people in the crowd. This one, and those 2. He pointed at the few people who had led the crowd and shouted the loudest. He then ordered the men in suits. These few, take them away. You bugs have been eliminated. WH. What? Why are you arresting me? Wait. Stop. What right do you have? Let me go. I'm the deputy commissioner of the police station. Who dares to touch me? As the few people were being dragged away, they were shouting and resisting with all their might, but it was all in vain. The men in suits and sunglasses working for the organizer were all good at arresting people. Not only were they professional, but they also had the advantage in numbers. Unless it was a superpowered person with extraordinary combat power, even if it was a champion of a martial art competition or a special forces soldier, they would still be taken down. Oomph. The whining of a defeated dog sounds so pathetic and pathetic. After the people were dragged away one by one, the organizer lowered his head and looked at the remaining players. He spoke again. Listen up, those stinking bugs who haven't been caught. Here, no one can talk to me about power, reliance, or identity. You've already fallen into the mud and bet your lives on this. Do you still think you're the big shots who can order others around? Those who don't understand the situation, you deserve to be stomped to death by me. His words silenced the people who were left behind. No one dared to raise a ruckus or question him. They didn't even dare to attract his attention. You said that the adjustment wasn't because there was a problem with the rules. In this moment of silence, someone suddenly said, "Then what is it for? Other than Brother Jew, who else would have this kind of courage?" "Oh, it's you." The organizer looked towards the source of the voice. When he saw the crow mask, he laughed. "Ha! Good question." He paused for a second and continued, "Of course, it's to let me have fun." His answer, or rather, his reason, was obviously unreasonable. However, at this moment and place, it was reasonable and reasonable. No one dared to question it. The next second, Fong Bujua added, "You plan to make the first 64 people on the ranking lose their immunity, right?" The organizer was surprised to be seen through, but he didn't get angry because of it. "Your reaction is quite fast." "That's right, I want to forget it." Fong Bujua immediately cut him off. "That's very boring." What he said scared the surrounding guests quite a bit. The screams of the people who were dragged away earlier were still ringing in their ears. Now, this man with the crow mask dared to contradict and deny the organizer's wishes. Even the men in suits and sunglasses were worried for Brother Jew, much less the bystanders. "You said that The organizer's tone turned cold. "Boring." Fong Bujua didn't answer this question. Instead, he said directly, "I believe you've done this kind of adjustment in the previous games that you organized." He walked forward as he spoke. "If I'm not mistaken, those who have their immunity removed will definitely try to drag the time in the following matches, right? So what? There are still 2 more." The organizer replied, "If you want to, it's completely possible to only play 2 matches in 2 hours, right? Imagine how boring that would be." Fong Bujua interrupted him again. "Or, to prevent this from happening, are you going to adjust the time again?" The organizer understood that if he adjusted the time to that extent, it would be too much for the leaders. "Then what do you think?" "I have a very interesting suggestion." Fong Bujua continued. "Oh." When the organizer heard the word interesting, his interest was immediately piqued. "Go ahead." Then, Fong Bujua said 5 words, second borrowing rights. These 5 words were enough to make the organizer's eyes light up and his body tremble. Of course, that alone isn't enough. Fong Bujua knew that the other party had taken a bait. On this basis, remove everyone's immunity from challenge, and the guessing order is decided by coin toss, and that should be enough. He paused for a moment. "Oh, by the way, the time should be adjusted, but not for the leader, but for everyone. Let's change the guessing time to 20 minutes. Anyway, everyone is familiar with the game. Unless they want to drag it out intentionally, there's no need to spend more than 40 minutes. When he finished, silence descended. This was the silence of shock and also the silence of waiting. And what people were waiting for in shock was undoubtedly the organizer's reaction. "You?" After a moment, the organizer grabbed the railing with both hands and said in a trembling voice, "Really?" With every word he uttered, the hearts of the people below rose to their throats. You're 2F asterisk king fun. Ha ha. The organizer laughed out loud and slapped the railing in joy. The men in suits and sunglasses were stunned for a few seconds before they all breathed a sigh of relief. The guests below were nervous because they all understood that the new rules that Feng Bujia had just mentioned had become a new topic that they urgently needed to understand. It's okay, Feng Bujia replied in a calm tone. Then he said, I considered that it would take a certain amount of time to prepare the supplementary contract for the second borrowing, print the new rules, and so on. That's why I didn't propose more complicated changes. If there's enough time, things like the two sides of the duel will be randomly matched, or an interest-bearing loan between players under official supervision, or a sudden death method could be implemented. Hearing these words, the other players felt their scalps go numb. The organizer, on the other hand, laughed even harder. He looked at Brother Bujia and said, You're a bad person. Feng Bujia shrugged casually and laughed. I'm not a demon. Chapter 1186. The organizer used 10 minutes to perfect the few suggestions that Feng Bujia had given. He removed everyone's right to challenge and added in the rule that the referee would toss a coin to determine the right to attack first. In this way, before the duel was established, no one would know whether they would be the one who came up with the question or the guesser. The order of attack and defense was decided by the coin toss, so both sides had nothing to say. In addition, in order to reduce the objective gap caused by the lack of funds, the second loan was started. The upper limit of the loan was the difference between the player's current funds and the funds of the player in first place, rounded to the nearest whole number. By the way, the player in first place was Feng Bujia. The time advantage gave him more opportunities to hunt. By 10 o'clock sharp, his funds had reached more than $300,000. Therefore, the amount of the second loan was based on him. For example, if someone lost less than $10,000, he could borrow $290,000. If someone had $60,000, he could borrow $240,000. Of course, they had to sign a new supplementary contract on the basis of the first contract they signed. To make a long story short, at 10:38, the second loan began. Although the organizer had a group of top legal and financial personnel, the drafting and printing of the contract still took about 20 minutes. To be honest, on the basis of not making any mistakes, these people's work was already very efficient. However, the organizer still seemed to be dissatisfied because he didn't like to wait. Hurry up, scumbags. Why are you still dawdling when it comes to borrowing money? Time waits for no one. While the players were borrowing money, the organizer was already urging them on the second floor. Indeed, it was getting closer and closer to midnight. Even if Feng Bujia shortened the time of each duel to less than 20 minutes, they wouldn't be able to play too many rounds. At 10:45, everyone who needed the money had completed the second loan. At this moment, the winner was decided. This time, everyone knew the importance of funds. No one was timid or hesitant anymore. They all raised the amount of funds to the upper limit of $300,000. Therefore, at this point in time, the difference in funds between all the players disappeared. The right to challenge each other was also released. The order of attack and defense was up to fate. In short, they had returned to a state of relatively fair competition. Of course, it didn't mean that the advantage of the frontrunners from before had disappeared. This was because, at midnight, the moment the number-guessing duel ended, everyone had to pay off their loans before settling their chips. Therefore, the laggards were still at a disadvantage. The second loan only gave them the capital and opportunity to counterattack. As for whether or not they could make a comeback in the face of adversity, that would depend on their performance. Young master, there's something I don't understand. 10 minutes after the duel restarted, Suitman found an opportunity to speak to the organizer. What's the matter? The organizer was in a good mood and immediately responded in a brisk tone. I can see the purpose of Jiang Dao's suggestion to you. He was afraid that the set of rules you originally wanted to change would be too disadvantageous for him. So he suggested a compromise. Suitman continued, but what I don't understand is, why is he still actively earning chips? Yes, young master, I don't understand either. Suitmanby also said at this time, according to the current situation, he should try to stall for time and adopt a conservative strategy. He paused for half a second and said, as the frontrunners, there's no need to continue to strive for profits. They just need to lose less, and they'll be able to stay at the front of the settlement. Huh? The organizer heard this and laughed. It's not your fault. He shook his head. The reason you can't understand his behavior is that your most basic thinking mode is different from his. As soon as he said this, the two men in suits looked at the organizer with puzzled faces, waiting for him to continue. You and 99% of the hundreds of people here are all thinking based on the idea of survival. The organizer paused for a moment and continued. Survival in this game, survival in tonight's bet, return to the outside world, survival. Suitman gulped. Young master, is this thinking wrong? There's no right or wrong in this. The organizer replied. It can only be said that your thinking represents the will of the majority, which is the so-called normal. As he said this, his gaze turned to Brother Jew in the venue. But that man, his thinking is different from yours, or should I say, abnormal. Does he want to die? Suitmanby asked very straightforwardly. Huh? The organizer was amused. That's not what I meant. He turned his head and looked at the two bodyguards beside him. Then, he said, you've watched many of these good shows with me. What do you think the essence of gambling is? The two men looked at each other and did not answer because they did not have a concrete answer in their hearts. Ha! Seeing this, the organizer waited for a few seconds and said himself, gambling is a meaningless death. Although he said an answer, the two men still did not understand. The size of the cards, the number of points on the sieve, the whereabouts of a certain marble, the winner or loser of a certain game, and even what kind of car will drive past in the next minute. The organizer continued, gambling is all about these boring things. At least most of them are boring and meaningless. If it doesn't involve bets, gambling will probably become as boring as statistics. But with betting, it's different. Winning can mean gaining everything, and losing can mean losing everything. Betting everything on a result that hasn't happened yet, enjoying the excitement of the process, and bearing the bliss or pain when the result is revealed. This is the real gambler, the real rascal. Young master, you mean? Suitman turned to look at Brother Jew. He is also a real no. The organizer interrupted him. You're wrong to use the word also. He spread his hands and smiled. Only he's the real deal. I'm not a rascal. I'm just a coward. He said sadly, people like me who use money to protect myself and stay in a safe situation from the beginning to the end can't be counted as gambling. At most, it's playing. The organizer paused for a moment before continuing. Obviously, this Mr. Crow is a complete scoundrel. To make an inappropriate comparison, when everyone else is thinking about how to survive until the next round of the game, he is thinking about how to kill everyone. This difference in nature, coupled with the gap in ability, makes his execution ability several levels higher than others. Night, 11:59 p.m. There was only 1 minute left before midnight. According to the rules, the duels that had not been completed by midnight could be postponed until the end. At this moment, almost all the guests were still dueling. Some of them had calm expressions on their faces, some had complacent expressions, and some had an expression that said it's already over. Their masks covered their expressions, but sweat and tears were still flowing down their cheeks and chins uncontrollably. Their bodies were trembling, and their postures were also unconcealable. It could be said that although the last duel was not over yet, it was easy to tell who was going to be eliminated based on their body language. On the other hand, the number of men in suits and sunglasses in the venue had increased again. Moreover, there were dozens of women in suits and sunglasses. As the staff, they knew very well that the following scene would be quite ugly, so they needed to suppress a large number of people to control the situation. In this noisy moment after midnight was also a scene that the organizer was very happy to see. The people who had fallen into the swamp of despair showed their ugly and pathetic postures and faces. The men, who had been standing tall and proud, were now kneeling on the ground and begging for mercy, weeping bitterly. The women, who had been charming and graceful, were now screaming and crying hysterically. However, this last struggle was undoubtedly in vain. They were eventually dragged out. Among them, those who did not sign the protection contract were forced to return to their respective cabins. Once the ship docked, they would be driven ashore and bear more serious debts. As for those who had signed the protection contract, they were grouped according to gender. The other guests did not know where they were going, but they could imagine their future as possessions. Midnight, 12:25 p.m. Ladies and gentlemen, tonight, the organizer came down from the second floor for the first time. Allow me to congratulate you first. He walked confidently to the middle of the main hall, and the two men in suits followed closely behind, one on each side of him. Congratulations to all of you for coming out on top in the number guessing contest. The organizer said this and clapped his hands lightly. The next second, all the men and women in suits and sunglasses around him applauded. However, from their faces, there was not the slightest hint of congratulations. Before announcing the rules of the next round of the game, allow me to propose a toast to all of you. Before the organizer finished speaking, the 64 men in sunglasses had already carried trays to the remaining 64 guests in the main hall. Each of them had a glass of champagne on the tray in their hands. Please do me the honor. As the organizer spoke, he took his glass of champagne from the hand of the 65th staff member and raised the glass high. Seeing this, the guests naturally raised their glasses one after another. Some of the more tightly masked guests used their other hand to slightly lift the lower half of their masks, ready to drink. As for Fong Bujua, he had to raise the glass to almost the same height as his face to drink the thing inside. So at this moment, his action of putting the straw into the eye of the mask was still the same. Then, the organizer raised his glass for a few seconds and said, Let me think a toast. Hurry up, my hand is sore. As soon as the organizer finished speaking, Brother Ju urged him. The organizer pursed his lips under the mask. Okay. Then to the world, and before he could say the word, and Fong Buju interrupted him. Are you kidding? Peace my ass. Do you think you're participating in a beauty contest? Something else. When the organizer heard this, his face twitched, and he muttered in his heart, Hey, you're the one urging me. You're the one being picky. You're just looking for trouble. Although he thought about it, he still changed his words. Then, thank you all. Are you holding a 1-month-old celebration or a class reunion? Why don't you call us guests instead? What are you thanking us for? You make it sound like we're here to give you face. Change it to something else. Brother Ju interrupted the organizer again and activated his ridiculing ability. I haven't even said what I want to thank you for. The organizer finally couldn't take it anymore and yelled at Brother Ju. Are you done? Why don't you just say it? Okay, I wish you all good health. Fong Bujua spoke very quickly and then slurped down half the glass of champagne. The organizer was shocked, but after he recovered from his shock, he finished the champagne in his hand with the other guests. Because he felt that he had lost his composure, the organizer awkwardly cleared his throat after drinking. After a few seconds, he said, Then, everyone, I will now announce the content of the second game. After that, he raised his hand and snapped his fingers. 2 seconds later, a man in a suit and sunglasses came over and took the empty glass in the organizer's hand. Then, he handed something to the organizer. After the organizer took it, he raised the thing and showed it to everyone. I call this game triple neurasthenia. When he said those words, he used a shuffling technique that was commonly seen in Hong Kong gambling movies in the 1990s and shuffled the neatly stacked, brand new cards in his hand from top to bottom. At this moment, the 63 guests present didn't see anything from the organizer's dazzling technique, except for one person, who already knew a lot. It's not poker, it's special cards. There are a total of 102 cards divided into 34 patterns. It's more difficult than the normal neurasthenia, but after a glance, Fong Buja muttered to himself, you're still too young to play cards in front of me. Chapter 1187. Neurasthenia was a card game that tested one's memory and strategy. Similar to guessing the numbers, this game was usually played in the form of 2 or more people. The gameplay was as follows. First, prepare a deck of cards and exclude the big and small kings. Then, shuffle the remaining 52 cards and place them on the table with their backs facing up. Then, one of the 2 players or more than one player would flip the cards. The flipper could flip 2 cards at a time. If the 2 flip cards had the same points, the flipper could keep the 2 cards in his hand and obtain the right to flip 2 more cards. On the other hand, if the 2 flip cards had different points, the flipper would have to cover them and change the right to flip the cards. So on and so forth until all the cards were flipped. The player with more cards in his hand would win. The above was the most basic neurasthenia. Under this set of rules, there was almost no room for strategy. It was a game of 90% memory, 10% luck. However, there were many derivative ways to play neurasthenia. After some new rules were added, the game would become quite complicated and interesting. For example, the differential scoring system was a game of not looking at who flipped more cards, but who flipped the cards with the highest points. Another example was the addition of joker cards, big and small kings, on the basis of the differential scoring system, and the rule that the player who flipped a pair of joker cards could immediately exchange points with the other player. Under these 2 modes, the importance of luck and strategy was highlighted. In addition, there were various ways to increase the difficulty of the game. For example, the setting of using 2 decks of cards, but after flipping the cards, you can only score points if the cards and cards are the same. The setting of flipping a specific combination, for example, flipping 2 cards with different points, but the same cards of the same suit, or flipping 2 cards whose points add up to 13, would result in a penalty of points. There were also rules such as limiting the flipping time. In short, there were many variations of neurasthenia. But no matter what, one thing would not change. Memory was the most powerful weapon in this game. 1 o'clock in the morning. The preparations for the triple neurasthenia game were ready. The second round of the game was a knockout system. 64 players would fight each other in pairs. Whoever won 3 matches in a row would enter the top 8 and become tonight's winner. As for the 56 losers, they weren't as miserable as the losers from the previous round. At this point, the remaining USD they had on hand had been deducted from the loan, and the loan contracts they had signed had been nullified. Therefore, the 56 losers could at least take the net victory of the guessing number contest with them. Of course, whether that little bit of money could solve their problems outside was a matter for another day. Now, let's talk about the second round of the game. The matchmaking method for this game was to draw lots. In fact, the players didn't have to draw anything. All they had to do was to take turns shaking a roller with a number ball. The 64 number balls in the roller corresponded to seats 1 to 64, and the seats would determine the pairings for the duel. As for this setting, Fong Bujue could understand. If it were him, he would probably arrange it the same way. Although it was most efficient to use the computer to randomly match the players, the organizer obviously didn't want to see all the results come out in an instant without the participation of the players themselves. What the organizer wanted to see was the reaction and performance of each guest when the results were revealed one by one. Therefore, he naturally wouldn't let the process end in a few seconds. Therefore, the drawing of lots took up nearly half an hour. In this half an hour, the players watched the rules of the game while taking turns to draw lots. In the blink of an eye, it was 1 o'clock in the morning. The game officially began. Fong Bujue's opponent was a woman wearing a black butterfly mask. She should be a very beautiful woman. He said should because she was wearing a mask on her face, so it wasn't absolute. Even though, in Fong Bujue's eyes, what he saw was a luxurious low-cut gown and the seductive curves that were outlined by it. In his nose, he could smell various kinds of famous cosmetics that were used appropriately. In his ears, he could hear a voice that made his imagination run wild and coquettish, but did not lose its charm. But he still wasn't sure that his opponent was a beautiful woman. If you asked why, Brother Jew would answer you. In this day and age, you can't even trust the cover of asterisk, 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 asterisk. How can you? Well, let's go back to the story. Oh, Mr. Crow, I didn't expect to meet you at the beginning of the second round. The woman in the butterfly mask smiled softly and said meaningless dialogue. She seemed to be trying to test Brother Jew's reaction. She leaned over the table of the card and tried to show off her cleavage. She didn't hide her flirtatious behavior. However, the response she got was, "Nonsense. The match is decided by drawing lots." Feng Bujue was completely unmoved. He replied in his usual calm tone with a hint of sarcasm. "If you could guess the outcome in advance, you wouldn't have come on this boat. You could have just bought a lottery ticket." The woman in the butterfly mask was slightly stunned by Brother Jew's ridicule, but she didn't show it. Instead, she quickly adjusted her mood and said, "Oh, I'm just a little afraid of competing with you. That's why I said that." Obviously, she was a very sociable woman. No matter what kind of person she faced, no matter their gender, age, or personality, she could handle it. It wasn't an exaggeration to say that from a domineering CEO to a wretched otaku, she was confident that she could make them like her in a short time. Unfortunately, Feng Bujue did not seem to fit into her top to bottom category. Even from left to right, from inside to outside, from shallow to deep, from whole to part, from appearance to essence. Brother Jew was the type that she had not encountered before. If you're scared, just admit defeat. Talking nonsense won't solve the problem. Feng Bujue replied lazily. At the same time, he walked toward a round table a few meters away. In less than 10 seconds, he dragged 2 chairs with backrests over from the other side. Oomph. His words are very unpleasant, but he still has a gentlemanly demeanor. When a woman in the butterfly mask saw Brother Jew move 2 chairs over, she thought to herself. She thought that one of the chairs was prepared for her. She was too naive. Phew. It doesn't look heavy, but it's quite heavy. 2 seconds later, Feng Bujue placed the 2 chairs on his side. One was for sitting, and the other was for standing. He sat down and looked at the referee at the table with his dead fish eyes. "So, Mr. Referee, if you don't mind, can you help us shuffle the cards while you're looking at my chest through your sunglasses?" Chapter 1188. In order to reduce the chance of elimination, this triple neurasthenia game adopted the format of 2 out of 3 games. In the first game, the referee was responsible for shuffling and arranging the cards. In the second game, the loser in the first game was responsible for the shuffling. If there was a third game, then the loser in the second game would shuffle the shuffling. To make a long story short, after the referee finished the preparation work, the first game between Crow and Black Butterfly began. "You two, the order will be decided by a coin toss. Is that okay?" After the referee arranged the cards, he said to the 2. "No need," Feng Bujue said to the judge. Then, he turned to the woman with the butterfly mask and said, "Ladies first. It's your choice whether to attack first or later." Hearing this, Black Butterfly snorted in her mind. "Humph. You think you're so smart. You want to test me in this way?" She thought so, but she wouldn't show it. The next second, Black Butterfly smiled charmingly and said softly, "Mr. Crow, you're really gentle. Then I'll also give in. I'll choose to attack from back." Although she said the word give in fact, she didn't give up any benefits. People who were familiar with neurasthenia knew that in this game, attacking from the back actually had an advantage. Take the most basic neurasthenia as an example. Excluding cheating, the probability of the first attacker scoring in the first game was very, very low. Because at this time, all the cards had not been flipped, so there was no memory factor. The flipper relied on 100% luck. Even if someone could really score in the first game with luck, the probability of scoring again in the second game was infinitely close to 0. In short, whether it was the first game or the second game, the first attacker could at most flip a pair of cards and at least let the opponent see 2 cards with different points. When a second attacker began to flip the cards, at least they knew the position of the 2 cards in advance. At this time, the attacking side flipped over an unrevealed card. If the points of this card matched the points of the previous 2 cards, they would be able to score easily. Of course, the degree of this advantage was still far from the level of the first player in Go. After all, neurasthenia was a game where luck played a factor. The player who attacked later might flip over two cards that were different from the one revealed by the player who attacked first. Or maybe they didn't flip the first card, but unfortunately flipped the second card, which would give the opponent free points. In addition, the above was just a common situation in neurasthenia. In this triple neurasthenia, because of the large number of cards and the higher the score requirement, the second attacker's advantage was minimal. But an advantage was an advantage. Even if it was a little bit, it could decide the final outcome. The final outcome. In this regard, Black Butterfly would definitely not give in by half a step. After getting the answer, the judge turned to look at Brother Jew and asked for confirmation. Do you agree? No problem. Feng Bujue, who was slumped on the chair, replied disapprovingly. He raised his hand and said, then, I'll start now. Then he stretched out his hand and flipped his first card of the round. As mentioned before, triple neurasthenia didn't use a deck of cards, but a special set of cards. There were 102 cards in this card set, with a total of 34 patterns. 32 of them were taken from the 32 signs in Buddhism. They were bun on the head, white hair between the eyebrows, eyelashes like a bull, cyanotic eyes, full cheeks, always good taste, wide tongue, voice like a Brahma king, 40 teeth, close teeth, white teeth, line upper body, straight body, wide body, golden body, bright body, one pore and one hair, full body, full shoulders, full armpits, 7 full spots, moist skin, slender fingers, soft hands and feet, silk net between the fingers, hanging hands over the knees like a horse hiding in the dark like a deer king, high lotus position, wide heels, flat feet, and round feet. There were 3 cards of each of the above 32 signs cards, so there were 96 cards. There were 2 remaining cards, namely Pure Land of Bliss and Infernal Hell. These 2 cards were different from the others. Infernal Hell had 4 cards, while Pure Land of Bliss only had 2 cards. According to the rules, in triple neurasthenia, each player had to flip 3 cards, and they had to flip 3 cards of the same type to score points. Otherwise, the right to flip cards would change hands. All the 32 signs cards had the same score, which meant that 1 card was equal to 1 point. At any time, if someone flipped 3 cards of Infernal Hell in a round, that person would lose the game. When both sides had flipped a total of 25 cards, if any side flipped 2 cards of Pure Land of Bliss in a round, the game would be declared over. The winner would be determined according to the current score difference, and the side who flipped out Pure Land of Bliss would get an additional 10 points. In the case where Infernal Hell and Pure Land of Bliss were not triggered, when a total of 31 cards were revealed on the table, the game would be declared over. The winner would be determined according to the current score difference between the 2 sides. In summary, other than the conventional scoring, the key point of triple neurasthenia was how to flexibly use Pure Land of Bliss to secure victory and effectively avoid Infernal Hell cards. Wow, this is the first card. Feng Bujua laughed when he saw the first card he flipped over. He placed the Infernal Hell face up, then leisurely reached out and flipped over the second card that was further away from it. Just from the choice of flipping this time, it was enough to show that Brother Jew knew some of the tricks of neurasthenia quite well. When playing this game, flipping over a few cards next to each other was obviously easier to remember. However, if the cards were flipped over far away, it would be more difficult to remember. This was because after the player looked away, or after a period of time, the memory would quickly become blurry. Moreover, in this first round, the judge used a disorderly way to place the cards. Under such a way of placing cards, the method of flipping the card from a distance would make it even more difficult to remember. Obviously, Feng Bujue, who used this tactic, was very confident in his memory ability. This one is also. 2 seconds later, Feng Bujue flipped over his second card. It had to be said that his luck was terrifying. Both of his hands were Infernal Hell. Seeing this, Black Butterfly laughed out loud. Ha! Mr. Crow, you're really good. It's only the first round, and you've already flipped over 2 of the same cards. Well said, well said. When Feng Bujue put down the second card, he was as calm as ever. According to probability, although the probability of flipping over the same card in the first round is very low, in this very low probability, The probability of flipping over to infernal hell is indeed higher than flipping over two other cards. After all, this card is one more card than the other cards. He paused. As far as I'm concerned, this flip can only be considered as average. As he spoke, he picked another card that was further away from the second card. Under the pressure of, if there's another infernal hell, he'll lose immediately, he flipped over his third card without thinking. Fortunately, this time, he flipped over a likeness card, Brahma's likeness of a king. Phew! Feng Bujue himself was not that nervous, but the judge sighed in relief on his behalf. The first round has ended. The right to flip the cards has changed hands. The judge announced the result as he flipped the three cards back to their original position on the table. Here, I want to emphasize again. After the judge flipped over the cards carefully, he continued. For the practice of leaving a mark in the process of flipping the cards, my judgment is very strict. Please pay attention to it. Upon hearing this, Black Butterfly pouted her sexy red lips. She leaned forward slightly and said to the judge in a sweet voice, "Then, what if I accidentally crumpled the cards? What should I do?" Her coquettish voice softly drilled into the judge's ears. Coupled with the visual benefits of her leaning over, the judge's bones melted. The judge unconsciously swallowed his saliva, took half a step back, and answered seriously, "If it's an accidental damage to the card, then use the backup card to replace the original card. There won't be any impact." "Oh, I see." Black Butterfly muttered and began to flip the cards. She wore a pair of long black gloves that wrapped around her slender fingers like a veil. It also made the skin on her arms look even fairer. 1, 2, 3. Black Butterfly counted softly and flipped open 3 adjacent cards in a row. Let's talk about luck for a moment. If randomly flipping over 3 cards at the beginning and getting 2 Infernal Hell cards was Brother Jew's average level, then Black Butterfly's average level was the same as most people's. The 3 cards she flipped over at the beginning were all likeness cards, and the 3 cards were not repeated. Thus, the battle between the two began in such a manner. In the second round, Feng Bujue still used the long-distance method of flipping over cards, and the cards he flipped over were all previously unrevealed cards. In view of the fact that he had already flipped 2 infernal cards in the first round, as long as he didn't touch those 2 cards, no matter where he flipped, he wouldn't be defeated by flipping 3 infernal cards in a row. Therefore, he flipped very quickly this round. After revealing 3 infernal cards, he ended the round. Black Butterfly's second round was similar to her first round. She chose a card that was adjacent to the 3 cards she flipped over in the first round and flipped over 3 more cards in a row. This time, 3 likeness cards were revealed. One of them was the Brahma King card that Feng Bujue flipped over in the first round. This was also the first card of the same suit in this game, other than the Infernal Hell cards. Then, it was Brother Jew's third round. His strategy didn't change. He still flipped over cards that had never been revealed before. What was surprising was that he seemed to have gotten lucky this time, because the first card he flipped this round was the King's image of sound like Brahma. In other words, as long as he flipped out the 2 King's image of sound like Brahma that were revealed before, he would be the first to obtain 3 points. "Up!" Black Butterfly exclaimed softly when she saw the card. She immediately said, "Sigh, it seems like you're going to be the first to score, Mr. Crow." As she said this, she put on a sad look and sighed softly. Then, she straightened her body and crossed her arms in front of her chest. Under the effect of this posture, the 2 lumps of white fat on her chest were squeezed up, and against the backdrop of the low-cut dress, it formed an incomparably alluring picture. Seeing this, the referee who was standing at the side was a little embarrassed. However, this kind of interference couldn't be called a foul, so the referee just rolled his eyes and didn't say anything. At this moment, Feng Bujue muttered, and then he stopped moving. Even though she couldn't see his expression through the mask, Black Butterfly could tell based on her experience that he was looking at her. Did it work? Her opponent's hesitation made her quite proud. This is how this game works. The way you flip over the cards will indeed make it harder for your opponent to remember, but it's the same for you. Once you look away, Even if it's just for a second, it might cause a deviation in your memory. Ha! Just like now, after staring at my chest for a few seconds, there's an 80% chance that you can't remember where the first voice like Brahma's image is. Referee. A few seconds later, Fong Bujue stood up. Can I go get a drink? The referee glanced at him and replied, Please try to hurry up. He paused for half a second and added, Even though there is no timer in this second game, the judgment of stalling still exists. Understood. Fong Bujue answered tepidly. He then got up from a chair and walked to the champagne tree in the main hall. Stalling? Black Butterfly looked at Brother Jew's back and smirked internally. It's useless. Neurasthenia relies on short-term memory. Once this memory is lost or forgotten, it will be impossible for you to remember it no matter how hard you try. Fong Bujue didn't make them wait too long. He was back in less than a minute. After inserting a straw into the champagne and taking a sip, Brother Jew raised his hand and flipped over a card that hadn't been flipped in the previous rounds. Obviously, he had given up on scoring. Therefore, as expected, the third card he flipped over was also a card that was further away and hadn't been flipped over before. Huh, what the hell? At this moment, Black Butterfly's thought turned into mockery. After going around in circles, you know you can't remember anything, so you simply gave up on scoring and flipped over 2 new cards to distract me? You're such a gentleman. Black Butterfly despised her opponent in her heart, but on the surface, she still said gratefully, Since you're so polite, then I won't hold back. Oh, Fong Bujue responded in a lazy tone. Do as you please. Soon, the referee reset the cards. Thus, Black Butterfly's third round of flipping began. Her goal was very clear. She quickly and accurately flipped over the 3 Voice of Brahma cards. This lady, 3 points. A second later, the referee picked out the 3 cards of the same suit, stacked them together, and placed them face up on the table next to Black Butterfly. The table used in the second game was much larger than the one used in the number game, so there was plenty of space. He then said to Black Butterfly, After scoring, you can flip over 3 more cards. Okay. Black Butterfly smiled sweetly at the referee. Then, she stared at the pile of cards on the table silently for a long time. About a minute later, she flipped over the 3 new cards in the order she flipped over the previous cards. Just like that, the game continued. After 10 rounds, Black Butterfly had scored 15 points, and Fong Bujue. Not only did he not score a single point, there were several times where he did not flip out a card that had already appeared even though he already had the chance to score. That was why he missed the chance. Although Black Butterfly's memory ability was not to the point where she would succeed as long as there was a chance to score, she only needed to try 2 rounds at most to get the score for those cards where all 3 cards of the same suit had already appeared. However, at this moment, it's about time. Fong Bujue suddenly said something that didn't make any sense. Black Butterfly had just finished flipping the cards. When she heard this, she was puzzled. Mr. Crow, what did you say? I mean, my observation of you. Brother Jew replied in a very calm tone. It's about time. Chapter 1189. Oh, Black Butterfly raised her eyebrows under the mask and asked in a sweet voice, What do you mean by that? Regarding the results of my observation, I'll explain it to you in the second round, Fong Bujue said as he stood up from his chair. Now, before he could finish his sentence, he quickly flipped over a card. The next second, he lowered his head and looked at the card. Then, he flipped over 2 cards of the same suit. Brother Referee, please report the score. Brother Jew reminded the referee as he was still in a daze due to Zhang Heng's fast movements. This gentleman gets 3 points. Please continue to flip the cards. The referee paused for a moment, then stuttered and said this sentence. Before the referee could finish his sentence, Fong Bujue quickly flipped another card. In less than 5 seconds, he flipped another card of 1 plus 2, and it was still the same. A score. 3 points. This time, the referee reacted quickly and reported, Please continue. Brother Jew sped up again. Before the referee could finish his sentence, he flipped another 3 cards. In the end, it was still the same. Just like that, Feng Bujue revealed the cards on the table at a speed that seemed to be able to see through the backs of the cards. The referee also cooperated with him and reported the score quickly. 3 points, please continue. 3 points, please continue. Even the other players and referees at the other tables were attracted by the continuous announcement. They all turned to look at Zhang Hong. In less than 2 minutes, Feng Bujue had scored 24 points consecutively. Even he felt that he was quite lucky in this round. Perhaps some people might find it strange. In the first 10 rounds, the total number of flips between the two of them had reached 75. Even if they excluded the 15 cards that had already been scored, there should still be 60 known cards left. Among these 60 cards, there should be at least 30 cards that could be combined and scored. Right? Wrong. First of all, among the 15 cards that Black Butterfly took away, almost all of them were cards that had been revealed more than twice. Among them, only one card was taken away when it was revealed for the first time. This was because that card was an unknown card that she had revealed in the first round. At that time, she remembered clearly where the 2 cards that matched that card were. In other words, among the cards that she had scored, 14 of them had already occupied the 60 flips. Secondly, among the remaining cards on the table, there were also cards that Black Butterfly had repeatedly flipped. Most of those cards were the cards that she had accidentally flipped over when she failed to score points, and were located near those scoring cards. In summary, at the beginning of the 11th round, there were less than 60 known cards on the table. In fact, there were only about 40 cards. Among these 40 cards, there were 2, Infernal Hell that Brother Jew had flipped over in the first round, and Elysium Land that Black Butterfly had flipped over in the 7th round. Therefore, there were only 9, all phases revealed, cards that could be directly used to score points. So, here came a question. Of course, this time, the question was not, why did Brother Jew only score 24 points, but how did Brother Jew score 24 points? The situation was like this. Since the first round, Feng Bujue had never flipped over the known cards. Until this round, Brother Jew had flipped over all the unknown cards that had never been flipped over before. Even if there were 2 cards of the same suit that he had flipped over, he would not flip over the known cards to score points, just like what he did in the 3rd round. But in the 11th round, his tactics suddenly changed. In the first 2 rounds of this round, he still used the strategy of flipping an unknown card in the first hand. However, in these 2 rounds, after successfully flipping a new card with 2 of the same suit revealed, he chose to go back and score. After getting 6 points, he adopted the strategy of not flipping an unknown card in the first hand for the first time and took the 9 points already known from the table instead. Not to mention the hidden meaning behind his actions, at least in Black Butterfly's opinion, what his opponent had done was, in just 1 round, he had used consecutive points to equalize the score difference between him and Black Butterfly. This unforeseen event undoubtedly made Black Butterfly's heart waver. However, it was not over yet. Next, Feng Bujue used the first flip over the unknown card tactic again, and he succeeded 3 more times, increasing his score to 24 points. Seeing this, Black Butterfly's hesitation quickly turned into panic and fear. Don't you think this is a bit unbelievable? Feng Bujue spoke at this very opportune moment. Heh, Black Butterfly forced a smile. I wonder, what did Mr. Crow use? I didn't use any special method. Feng Bujue seemed to be able to read Black Butterfly's mind. He directly interrupted Black Butterfly and continued. Everything that has happened so far is considered normal from a probability level. In my opinion, it is very boring because this is not a gamble at all. At most, it is a game. How is this possible? Black Butterfly finally could not help but ask in a more normal tone and speed. Can a normal person get 24 points in a row in this game? Heh, by normal you mean. Feng Bujue heard her and laughed. Are you referring to those who have poor short-term memory and poor observation skills? He paused for a second and continued. Now that you mention it, the average level of modern people is more or less like that. Take a white person, for example. An adult's ability to remember a string of random decimal numbers is usually less than or equal to 13 digits, and this is under the premise that they have the consciousness to remember it. He spread out his hands and looked down at the table. Take this triple neurasthenia game, for example. There are 102 cards, and the cards are printed with patterns that most people are not familiar with. If two normal people were to play this game, I'm afraid there would be no winner after more than 50 rounds. At this point, he changed the topic. But what I just said was normal from a probability level. I did not say that I am a normal person. He paused for half a second and said arrogantly, I am a person who can clearly remember all the cards that have appeared and know which cards have not been revealed. Black Butterfly did not respond to this. Logically speaking, if it was 5 minutes ago, she would never believe this, but now she was skeptical. You don't quite believe it, do you? It's okay. Feng Bujua once again saw through Black Butterfly's thoughts and continued. Listen to me. He did not wait for Black Butterfly to respond and began to explain directly. First of all, in the first 10 rounds, I undoubtedly had a chance to score points. For example, the voice of Brahma King. Hee. Speaking of which, do you really think that your flirting will work? Forgive me for being blunt. Even if your opponent is a hopeless lecher, in this kind of important gamble that concerns the rest of his life, he won't be distracted by that kind of factor. You mean, you deliberately did not score points at that time? Black Butterfly continued. Of course. Feng Bujue replied. In the third round, when I flipped the first card, there were only 12 cards on the table. Unless you have the special ability to erase other people's memories or eat other people's IQ through the visual nerves, otherwise, even if you are average white, you can still score points in that round, right? Black Butterfly could only snort at Brother Bujue's ridicule. After all, on this matter, she had nothing to refute. Therefore, there's only one possibility for me not to score points, and that is I don't want to score points. Feng Bujue continued. Then what do you want to do? Black Butterfly now used a hostile tone. Observe. Feng Bujue replied concisely, and then added, although I gave up the points I could get in these 10 rounds, I got valuable information. Your thinking pattern, the upper limit of your memory, the style of the duel, and so on. I have basically mastered it. Is that so? Black Butterfly obviously did not believe Brother Ju's words. Even if she believed that Brother Ju had an extraordinary memory, she would not believe that he could see through her thoughts. Black Butterfly stepped into the world of fame and fortune at the age of 16. At the age of 20, she was already a famous socialite. She was once naive, weak, and gullible, so she was hurt, and regretted. This year, she was 30 years old. She was strong, mature, and ruthless. She did not even need the butterfly mask because she had already put on a mask that she would never take off. No one really knew what she was thinking. Even if she took off her clothes in front of someone, she would not open up even a little bit of her heart. Yes or no, you will know in the second round. Brother Ju continued. In the first round, I will let you believe in my memory ability. As he spoke, he flipped over another unknown card. It seems that my score for this round will stop at 24, he said after seeing the card. Black Butterfly took a look at the card and said, What's wrong? This card is not heaven or hell. If you can remember all of them, you should be able to get. It's because I can remember all of them that I know it won't work. Feng Bujue rudely interrupted Black Butterfly again and continued. So far, among the revealed cards on the table, other than the Hell card and the Pure Land card, there are only 6 cards that can be paired, that is, the cards that have been revealed as 2 elements. As for the rest, they are all cards that have only been revealed as 1 element. In this triple neurasthenia, which requires 3 elements of the same element to score points, cards that have only been revealed as 1 element are useless. For example, the card that I am flipping over now. Unless I flip another unknown card of the same suit. Otherwise, not only will I not score points, but I will also create an extra 2 elements for you to score points. Of course, you have to remember the positions of the pairs. After that, he quickly flipped over 2 unknown cards that had never been revealed and ended his round. After saying so much, Black Butterfly did not rush to flip over the cards this time. Instead, he asked, You still haven't explained why you said that what you did in this round was normal in terms of probability. It's very simple. Feng Bujue replied. Think about it based on my clear memory of all the cards that have appeared, and you will understand at the beginning of this round, I knew that there were a total of 9 3-element cards that could score points directly, and 16, a total of 8 2-element cards. Excluding the 15 cards that you took and all the known cards, the probability of drawing a card that could score point from the remaining cards on the table was above 20%. The probability of one card appearing in every 5 cards. In the first round, I didn't have to consider this probability at all. If I didn't draw a card that could score points, I just had to continue to flip the cards and observe you for another round. But the actual situation was that I successfully drew a card, so I got the 3 points first. Then I got the chance to flip the cards in the second round. The first round of this round was very crucial, and the probability basically didn't change. But if I didn't get a card that could score points, I could only give up. In the end, I still got it, and I got rid of another pair of 2 elements cards. From then on, I stopped flipping the cards. Instead, I took away 100% of the points that could be scored. I kept all 9 3 elements cards to equalize my score. After the equalization, in fact, I was ready to stop scoring because there were still 6 known pairs left, and every time I flipped an unknown card that could score points, the probability of flipping it again would decrease a lot. In this kind of situation where it depended on luck, I really didn't have much confidence. What surprised me was that in the end, I still successfully flipped over 3 pairs of cards. And at this time, the probability of flipping over a card that could be obtained had already decreased to about 7%. From flipping over 5 cards, there was a chance of obtaining a card, to flipping over 14 cards. The result is as you can see. Hearing this, Black Butterfly's lips that were not covered by the mask were trembling slightly. She could now be sure of 2 things. First, she was a little unable to keep up with her opponent's thoughts. Second, this feeling of not knowing what was going on meant that what her opponent said about remembering all the cards that had been flipped and being able to calculate which cards have not been flipped was true. Clap, clap, clap. Okay, okay. After a moment of silence, Black Butterfly raised both hands and clapped for her brother Jew. She returned to her pretentious attitude. Mr. Crow, I admit that your memory ability is better than mine, and I deeply admire it. You flatter me. At this time, Fong Bujua had already sat back in his chair, sipping the champagne with a straw, and leisurely replied, It's just you. Black Butterfly smiled charmingly. Don't you like to show off a little too much? She leaned forward again, put her elbows on the table, and rested her chin on one hand, showing off her benefits. If you silently wait for a few more rounds, pick up some points appropriately, and wait until the moment when the 2 Elysium Land cards become known, raise the number of elements on the table to 25 elements in one go, and immediately flip 2 Elysium Land cards to turn the tables. Then, wouldn't I have no chance at all? Oh, Fong Bujua smiled jokingly and replied, You mean, under the current situation, you still think you have a chance? Chapter 1190. Indeed, Black Butterfly's chances of winning were very slim. In a game like Neurasthenia, the advantage of memory was the most obvious advantage. In this regard, Black Butterfly was no match for Fong Bujua. However, there was another factor that could determine the outcome of a game, and that was luck. In the earlier round, even though Fong Bujua had obtained a grand total of 24 points, as he had said, with the foundation of his absolute memory, this kind of score was not that crazy from a probability perspective. Excluding the 9 points that he was bound to get, the remaining points could be seen as a case of 5 out of 6 flops with a gradually decreasing probability. And this gradually decreasing probability was about 20% until it reached 7% before it stopped. From the looks of it, what he had done in this round could be attributed to his luck being pretty good. There was nothing special about it, so it was not a gamble but a game. Brother Jew thought it was a boring game. In addition, when this round was over, his seemingly pretty good luck had actually changed the direction of the wind. This was because the cards that Fong Bujua flipped in the last 3 hands were all cards that had 1 suit revealed. In other words, when he flipped the cards in the end, the number of known cards on the table increased from 3 to 6. In addition, the number of unknown cards on the table had decreased. When Black Butterfly flipped the unknown cards again, the probability of flipping a winning card had increased to more than 15%. Round 11, Black Butterfly's turn. After Brother Jew cleared the table, there were not many known cards left. So, Black Butterfly was more confident about the suit of the cards. In the first round, she flipped a new card at a position closer to the known cards according to her own rhythm. In the end, it was a known card, which was a winning card. Black Butterfly did not have Fong Bujuez, I remember clearly, but I can save it for later use mentality. She would definitely try to get points as soon as she had the chance. So, she immediately went back to find the other two cards that she flipped and succeeded. This lady gets 3 points, the judge announced. You may continue to flip the cards. Next, the situation was still the same. Black Butterfly flipped out another point card, and she quickly converted it into points. His next move was the same. Just like that, Black Butterfly tied the score with no surprises. Moreover, due to the reduction in the number of cards, the probability of her flipping the next hand to get a card was higher than 7% when there were only 3 pairs of cards in the known hand. What do you think? Black Butterfly smiled at Brother Jew. It's not like I don't have a chance, right? I was already mentally prepared for this kind of difference in luck before the duel began. Fong Bujue replied indifferently. In short, before you reach that score, you can flip as many times as you want. That score? Black Butterfly thought for 2 seconds and continued, Oh, you mean 33 points? Black Butterfly had no doubt studied the rules of the game carefully before the duel began, so she knew that 33 points was a very important score. According to the rules, after both sides revealed a total of 25 cards, the player could end the game by flipping 2 Elysium cards and enter the final stage. Then, putting aside the disparity in the outcome, if both sides had a certain number of points, the 25 cards could be divided into 12 versus 13 or 11 versus 14. In the case of 12 versus 13, the score was 36-39. At this time, the trailing side flipped the Elysium card, and with the additional 10 points, the score was 46-39, which was enough to turn the tide. In the case of 11 versus 14, the score was 33-42. At this time, the trailing side flipped the Elysium card, and with the additional 10 points, the score was 43-42, which was also enough to turn the tide. In other words, in this game, if the trailing side wanted to make a comeback, there was a prerequisite, and that was to get at least 11 cards to meet the minimum condition for a comeback. In theory, the most ideal situation would be, in a round where all 24 cards were revealed on the table, the person who was behind would flip the card. The moment they flipped the 25th card, they would have 33 points. Then they would flip the Gokura Kajodo card and end the round. For the trailing side, this was the fastest and best way to make a comeback. If this continued, the score gap would gradually widen because when there were not many unknown cards left on the table, the probability of flipping the cards that could be scored would greatly increase. The probability of flipping 1 Elysium cards in a row was not impossible. At that time, the side with a better memory and fewer mistakes would definitely have a higher score than the opponent. Since Fong Bujue's tone was still very relaxed. After all, it was normal for the opponent to know the meaning of this number. There was no need to be surprised. Then please work hard in this direction. You don't need to tell me. I will too. Black Butterfly replied and continued flipping the cards. By the end of the 11th round, the score of the two sides was 24-30, and Black Butterfly was leading. After that conversation, Black Butterfly flipped over 2 more cards that could be used up, leaving only 1 pair of 2-phase cards in the known cards. Then, in the last 3 hands, she flipped 2 0-phase cards in a row, which was a card that did not have a known suit, and she flipped the second Elysium card. Therefore, when this round was over, there were only 2 known pairs left on the table, and the positions of the 2 Elysium cards were already clear. So far, the 2 of them had a total of 54 points, which meant that the 18 phases had been revealed, and the number of cards left on the table was 48. Among them, there were 20 known cards, which were made up of 2 Inferno cards, 2 Elysium cards for Elysium cards, and 12 Elysium cards. There were a total of 28 unknown cards, which were 2 Inferno cards and 26 Elysium cards. In other words, at the beginning of the 12th round, the probability of Feng Bujue flipping the cards that could be scored was 2 out of 28, which was basically the same as his failure in the previous round, which was only about 7%. Seeing this, someone would definitely ask, can't he just not flip the unknown cards? Can't he just flip 3 known cards and throw the same situation to his opponent? The answer was yes, but it doesn't solve the problem. According to the flipping rule of the triple neurasthenia, the player had to flip at least 1 unknown card in 3 consecutive rounds, or else he would be penalized 5 points. The purpose of this rule was to prevent the players from wasting their chance to flip cards by flipping the cards that had already been flipped. As for why it was 3 consecutive rounds, it was naturally to take into account that some people might misremember the cards and end up flipping 3 known cards without scoring any points. Under such circumstances, the person who had failed 2 rounds in a row would have to bear the risk of being penalized for the 3rd round. Taking the current example into consideration, if Feng Bujue chose to flip 3 known cards in this round to waste his chance to flip cards, then when it was Black Butterfly's turn, she could do the same. Anyway, Black Butterfly didn't care. As the party with weaker memory, she was happy to see both parties flipping the old cards to help her consolidate her memory. Besides, she was the party who attacked from the back. In a situation where no one was willing to flip a new card, the party who attacked from the back would at least have the advantage of 1 card, because the party who attacked from the back would definitely reveal 1 more card than the other party. Of course, Feng Bujue was not the kind of person who would deliberately flip the known cards to defend. Real gamblers and scoundrels all knew that that kind of approach would not win. For example, when Brother Ju tricked Golden Face in the guessing game, if he had considered, what if I only guess 3 or 4 numbers correctly, or what if the opponent really made it to the 7th round? He would have retreated and avoided. In the end, he would have lost. The demons on the gambling table would not respond to the pleas of the weak. On the contrary, they would devour those weak people. Retreating, avoiding, giving up thinking, and praying and begging in one's heart would only lead to failure and destruction. The person who could win had to be convinced at that moment, I will definitely be able to guess more than 5 numbers. If he couldn't guess, he might die. And dying was not a big deal. Only with such willpower could he guide the luck and call for victory. Just as I expected, in the 12th round, the first hand, Feng Bujue flipped an unknown card. It was a 1 seize everything. At this moment, he had 2 options. The first option was a safer one. Give up on flipping the cards and turn back to flip 2 known cards to end his round. This way, he would only give the opponent a pair of known cards and reduce the number of unknown cards. When the Black Butterfly attacked, the probability of flipping the first card was 3 in 27, which was about 11%. The other, riskier option was to flip another unknown card. If the second card was the same suit as the first, he could score. Then, what was the success rate of this? What was the risk of failure? Through the known cards, it could be calculated that among the 27 unknown cards, 22 of them were pairs, which were the 1 is clear cards, 3 of them were the 2 are clear cards, and 2 of them were the hell cards. If Feng Bujue wanted to score, he had to flip the first card he flipped in this round, which was only about 3%. If he couldn't flip it, he was faced with 3 possibilities. First, he had an 81% chance of flipping the 1 is clear card, and then he would give the other party a pair of known pairs, so that the next time the other party flipped the cards, the probability of flipping the card would increase to more than 15%. Second, he had a 7% chance of flipping one of the other 2 seize everything cards, giving the opponent a 100% chance of scoring in the next round. Third, he also had a 7% chance of flipping the hell card, and this was already the best result. This way, the opponent's probability of flipping the card would increase to 5%, which wasn't a big increase. In summary, no matter how he looked at it, it was better to choose the safest option. But, according to this trend, if I flip another card, it will most likely be... Feng Bujue muttered as he flipped the second unknown card. In the end, he flipped the 2 sees everything card. Because he had flipped the cards twice in this round, and the cards were of different suits, so it was impossible for him to score. Therefore, the card he flipped was basically confirmed to be the opponent's score. It seems that luck is on your side. Feng Bujue saw the worst result, but he didn't care at all. I think you will get more than 6 points in the next round. As he spoke, he flipped the 3rd card without waiting for the opponent's response. What was unbelievable was that he flipped another unknown card. This time, he flipped the 1 sees everything card. So, there was another pair of open pairs on the table. What is this guy trying to do? Black Butterfly couldn't understand. She thought to herself, I can still understand the second hand. A man like him, who is so arrogant to the point of narcissism, might take a chance at this moment. But the 3rd hand, it's impossible to score, and it will almost certainly give me more advantages. Why would he flip an unknown card? Please. The next second, Feng Bujue's voice interrupted Black Butterfly's thoughts. I know what you are thinking. Don't hesitate because of something you don't understand. You should take the opportunity to get the points you deserve before your memory is blurred. If you make a mistake here, then it would be too easy for me to win. Chapter 1191. In the 12th round, in Feng Bujue's turn, one could say that he got a very bad result. When he gave out a set of all-seeing cards, he created 2 more pairs of cards from the cards that he already knew. Just like that, it was Black Butterfly's turn to flip the cards after successfully taking away the 3 known points. Black Butterfly's score increased to 33 points. Of course, she was the one in the lead, so this reversal of points did not mean much. But the point was the positions of the 2 Elysium cards were now clear. That was to say, from this moment on, as long as 6 phases were revealed on the table, that is, the total number of phases flipped by both sides reached 25 phases, the party with the right to flip cards would have a very high chance of winning directly. I see. I think I know what he's trying to do. After taking the 3 points, Black Butterfly did not immediately flip the unknown cards. Instead, she thought, the 3 times he flipped the cards just now seemed like a stupid move, but in fact, it was a trap. His intention was to increase my chances of scoring in this round. Thinking of this, Black Butterfly sneered and said to Brother Jew, You're really bad, Mr. Crow. Feng Bujue did not respond to this sentence, and his expression under the mask did not change. You're so generous to help me. To put it bluntly, you want me to continue to attack and reveal more unknown cards, right? Black Butterfly continued. Oh, you've seen through it. When Feng Bujue heard this, he knew there was nothing to hide. It's not that hard to see through. Black Butterfly was a little proud. Now that I think about it, you've never been thinking about this round or the next round, but the whole game. Since the first round, you've been following this train of thought. So, other than the rounds where you think you should fight for points, you've been revealing the unknown cards in every round. She paused and said, If you look at the rules alone, there are 3 conditions that must be met to determine the winner. First, the 25 phases must be revealed on the table. Second, the 2 Elysium cards must be revealed. Third, when the first 2 conditions are met, the party with the right to flip cards must have at least 33 points. At this point, Black Butterfly sneered. However, these are just the obvious conditions. They're the less obvious condition that you can't think of just by looking at the rules. That is, when the first 3 conditions are met, there must be a certain number of known cards that have not been flipped on the table. Not bad. Feng Bujue heard this and replied with a smile. You don't have to praise me. I'm just a normal person. Black Butterfly replied. Because I just realized your intention at this moment. She shook her head and said in a helpless tone, I have to admit, in addition to your memory ability, you're also better than me in terms of calculation. Using chess as an analogy, as long as you know the rules, you can count 1 or 2 moves ahead. But when you make your first move, you've already looked at the whole game. You're always 5 or even 10 steps ahead of others. As she spoke, she tapped the table with her hand. Based on the current situation, I seem to be the one with the upper hand because I'm very close to the 3 conditions on the surface. But in fact, the last condition is the key to victory. She continued, those who have enough hidden cards can win at any time. On the other hand, those who have no memory of the hidden cards or know nothing about them, no matter how close they are to victory in terms of points, they won't be able to take the last step, huh? That's not necessarily true. Feng Bujua said, if that step is on a ladder called strong luck, it's also possible to step to victory, isn't it? Strong luck? Black Butterfly sneered again. Humph, your so-called strong luck, don't tell me. From this point onwards, I'll reveal 6 cards with luck? Ha! If I had that kind of luck, I wouldn't have ended up on this boat, right? After that, she began to flip the cards. Without hesitation, she flipped the 3 known cards and ended her turn. Oh, is this your strategy? Seeing that, Feng Bujua said listlessly, then let me ask you, if from this round onward, I follow your example and only flip the known cards, after 2 rounds, will you be prepared to forfeit points, or will you be prepared to flip an unknown card at the very least? Black Butterfly heard this and smiled charmingly. You can wait for 2 rounds to see for yourself. Feng Bujua laughed. Look at your fearless face. You can't hide your thoughts even if you wear a mask. As he spoke, he stood up from the chair. You've already calculated. In order to determine the winner, you have to reveal at least 7 to 9 unknown cards, so you're not in a hurry. Anyway, you'll only flip 1 unknown card every 3 rounds. If you're lucky, you might be able to score points. If you're unlucky, you'll just give me a chance to score points. Now that you've got 33 points, it doesn't matter even if I get 15 points in the next round. The only thing you want to fight for is the 25th card. The rest doesn't matter. And before that, if I was like you and only flipped an unknown card every 3 rounds to kill time, you would also be happy because your memory ability isn't superior. This kind of good thing that repeatedly consolidates your memory is something you can't ask for more. His words had basically described the tactics that the other party had thought of. Black Butterfly didn't deny it. She immediately replied, so what if I know? At this point, she had already given up on her coquettish image and was communicating with her brother Bujua with her true nature. Even if I know, the situation won't change. If you want to blame someone, blame yourself for being too conceited. You didn't expect me to see through your strategy. Now, it's too late for regrets. She pretended to sigh and continued in a provocative tone. Sigh? Mr. Crow, I might as well guess what you're thinking. Right now, are you thinking, if I knew this would happen, I would have competed with her using the usual method from the beginning? Maybe I could have won. Maybe. Feng Bujua repeated the 2 words and replied coldly. What do you mean, maybe? As he spoke, he reached out his hand and was about to flip a card. You mean to give up your advantages in all aspects and compete with the opponent in a limited space, where luck plays a large role. As he spoke, he flipped an unknown card. I'm sorry. After Brother Ju put down the new card, he added, you and I are not in a relationship where we can play those easy games together. Even if the game in front of me isn't that interesting, it's still a victory that involves stakes. I don't intend to lose. Chapter 1192. In the 13th round, Feng Bujua's strategy did not change. He still flipped 3 unknown cards, and these 3 cards were all one-sided. In this way, there were 3 more pairs of known cards on the table, which greatly increased the probability of players flipping the cards. Then, it was Black Butterfly's turn. Logically speaking, she could still flip 3 known cards in this round to use up her right to flip cards. However, at the last moment, she wavered again. In this situation, if I still waste my right to flip cards? Black Butterfly calculated and hesitated. Indeed, in the last round, her plan seemed to work. Feng Bujua's last analysis also made sense. However, after the 3 unknown cards were revealed, the situation changed. The number of unknown cards on the table had decreased to about 20. The probability of flipping any single card was at least 5%, not to mention there were so many existing pairs. If it was any other opponent, it would be fine. However, Her opponent was Fong Bujua. Although Black Butterfly had not been in contact with Mr. Crow for a long time, she had already strongly felt that the man in front of her was uncompromising, fearless, and unflinching. Moreover, he was not simply reckless. He was indeed very strong. Based on Fong Bujua's previous performance, Black Butterfly was almost certain that he would flip another unknown card in the next round. Based on the table in the 12th round, Black Butterfly did not think it was a big deal. However, based on the current table, it was not entirely impossible to end the battle in one round. TSK. I have no choice. After some consideration, Black Butterfly sighed in her heart. In the end, she still flipped an unknown card. In the end, she flipped a card. Avicii Inferno. The appearance of this card meant that she would not be able to score in this round. Phew! Black Butterfly heaved a sigh of relief when she saw that. Fine, she muttered to herself. She then flipped through two cards that she already had a vague impression of to consolidate her memory before ending her turn. At this moment, Fong Bujua laughed. It had started to change. Black Butterfly heard this and was puzzled. Change? What changes? The next second, Fong Bujua replied in a sonorous and concise manner. Luck. Huh? Black Butterfly immediately showed an inexplicable expression under the mask. I thought you were going to say something. Luck? Hee hee. Previously, you were talking about probability. Now, are you going to jump to a god? Oomph. Fong Bujua ignored his opponent's mockery and began his 14th turn. 1, 2, 3. This time, he still took out 3-1 mutually evident cards. Ha! Ha! Seeing this situation, Black Butterfly could not help but laugh out loud. What's with the change of fortune? In the end, isn't it the worst situation? She spread her hands, taking a step back. Even if there is such a thing as luck, I will undoubtedly have the upper hand. As she said this, she raised her finger and pointed at the table. In my turn just now, although I took out an unknown card from the results, I didn't reveal a single mutually evident card, right? From another perspective, that was the best result in a situation where I had no choice but to take out an unknown card, wasn't it? Of course not. Fong Bujua replied coldly. In a situation where I had no choice but to take out an unknown card, the best result would be to score points. He was right. TSK. This time, Black Butterfly snorted but could not refute. Besides, just now, you didn't reach the point where you had no choice but to take out an unknown card. 2 seconds later, Fong Bujua continued. You took out an unknown card in the 11th round. So, in the 13th round just now, you could still take out 3 known cards to kill time. He paused and said in a deep voice, You should do that, Tumph. Stop talking nonsense. Black Butterfly heard this and shouted. That's what you want, isn't it? She said confidently. If I did that in this round, you would have taken out 3 known cards, and I would have no choice but to take out an unknown card in this round to give you a chance to kill me. She was right. That was indeed a tactic Brother Bujua could choose, but wouldn't it be fine if I won? After hearing what the man had to say, Fong Bujua replied in a light-hearted tone. If the situation that you mention happens, why don't you just win the next round, in your own turn? Nonsense. Including the 3 unknown cards you flipped in this round, and the hell card I flipped in the last round, it's only possible to win in 1 round. Black Butterfly replied. If you and I both flipped known cards just now, would it still be possible? It's possible. Fong Bujua gave a clear answer in a firm tone, refuting her statement. It's just that the probability is lower than now. At this point, he changed the topic, but in that hypothetical situation, luck is still on your side, so are you still talking about those nonsensical things? Black Butterfly couldn't take it anymore. She interrupted Brother Bujua. It seems that I was wrong about you. You're just so. After that, she reached out her hand and started flipping the cards. At this moment, although the score was still 33-24, the number of unknown cards on the table was reduced to a mere 18. Among them, there was 1 infernal hell, 8 pairs of 1 card, and 9 cards of 2 cards of known cards. The probability of flipping them was 50%. Besides, as the number of unknown cards was getting smaller and smaller, even if one accidentally drew a one card of known cards, the possibility of drawing another card of the same suit was no longer slim. However, everything that Feng Bujua mentioned above was very logical in terms of probability, but they were all abandoned by Feng Bujua. Just as Black Butterfly was about to flip the first card, Brother Bujua said coldly, "You won't get it." In the end, Black Butterfly really did get a one card of known cards. At that moment, Black Butterfly's expression under the mask twisted and her body trembled. Depression, anger, unwillingness. Similar emotions rose in her heart, and she couldn't suppress them. Like I said, luck has changed. Feng Bujua's mockery followed closely behind, and he was not going to let it go. Cut the crap. Black Butterfly lowered her voice and muttered fiercely, "There's nothing strange about an 8 out of 18 chance." "Is that so?" Feng Bujua continued. "Then why don't you try another 2 cards? I think you still won't get 2 cards of known cards." "Humph. Do you think I'm an idiot?" Black Butterfly snorted coldly. "I've already drawn a 1 card of known cards. I can only score if I get the same card on the second hand. If I can't, I'll just reveal more unknown cards to you. It's kind of digging my own grave. How about I let you continue to attack if you get one?" This time, it was Feng Bujua's turn to interrupt her. He used a very relaxed tone and said something unbelievable. "What did you say?" Even Black Butterfly couldn't believe what she heard. "What I mean is, in your next 2 flips, if you can get 2 cards of known cards on either hand, I'll treat that hand as your first flip and let you flip it 2 more times." Feng Bujua replied calmly, "Of course, in that case, you have to flip the known cards to score, and you can't flip the unknown cards. After you score, you'll still get 3 new flips, and the flipping mechanism will return to the normal rules." As he said that, he raised 2 fingers. "To put it simply, my concession is these 2, which are the 2 remaining flips you have." Hey, the referee interrupted. "Don't talk to yourself. The rules are not for you 2. Just as he was about to stop Brother Ju, his walkie-talkie suddenly rang. The referee could only temporarily stop the duel and take 2 steps back. He picked up the walkie-talkie, covered his mouth with his hand, and whispered, "Please speak." You. What? But this. Okay, I understand." Even though the 2 of them couldn't hear the voice from the walkie-talkie, they could guess from the referee's attitude that the person on the other end of the walkie-talkie was ordering him to do as Brother Ju said. "Looks like your boss supports me." When Feng Bujua said that, he didn't look at the referee, but at the organizer on the second floor. In fact, when the walkie-talkie rang, Brother Ju's first reaction was to look at the organizer. As expected, it was the person on the second floor who gave the order. The referee didn't say much. He just looked at the 2 people beside him and said, "Then, since Mr. Crow, as the non-beneficiary, has taken the initiative to suggest it, we'll make an exception." But, as he said that, he turned to look at Black Butterfly. "Ma'am, do you agree with this gentleman's suggestion?" His question was actually unnecessary. In the current situation, Black Butterfly couldn't possibly reject such a good offer. After she flipped a card, the table became 17 unknown cards, 6 pairs of cards, 10 pairs of cards, 1 hell card. If Feng Bujua didn't suggest it, Black Butterfly's choice would undoubtedly be to flip the 2 known cards and give the table to her opponent. However, since he was the one who suggested it, the situation was very different. In the next 2 hands, Black Butterfly's probability of getting a pair of cards on the first hand was 1,017, which was close to 59%. Even if she didn't get a pair of cards on the first hand, assuming she still got a pair of cards on the first hand, the probability of her getting a pair of cards on the second hand would be 1116, which was close to 69%. In conclusion, the concession that Feng Bujua proposed was definitely a concession. This was completely different from the fake concession that Black Butterfly had made at the start of the match. That was why Brother Ju's behavior was unbelievable. "I agree." Out of caution, Black Butterfly thought for a few seconds before she gave a firm answer. Then, "Please continue to flip the cards," the referee said after he got the answer. "This kid, why is he doing this?" When Black Butterfly reached out her hand, Her eyes under the mask were still staring at Fong Bujue. She was also puzzled. If it was someone else, she might have come to the conclusion that this guy was charmed by her. But she knew this crow before her was not that kind of person. I personally do not like to make unfounded guesses, but at that moment, Fong Bujue spoke again. At this moment, I wish to make a guess. Before the opponent flipped over the cards, he said, "This move of yours, you will still flip a card that reveals the truth." Humph! There's no point in cursing me. You'll regret it. Black Butterfly pouted and looked at the unknown cards on the table. After a few seconds of hesitation, she picked one and flipped it over. The result was a pair of cards. This is ridiculous. Black Butterfly turned and glared at the referee. Referee, this isn't normal, is it? Did he do anything weird just now? The referee was also stunned by the question. No. Are you sure you saw it clearly? Black Butterfly asked in a questioning manner. Because of Gold Face Scowl's example, without any evidence, no one dared to say that Black Butterfly cheated. Of course I saw it clearly, the referee replied. The referee replied. His hands and feet didn't even touch the table just now. Besides, you flipped the cards after he finished speaking. What could he have done? The referee's words were reasonable and Black Butterfly was speechless. Damn it. Black Butterfly turned back and glared at Brother Bujue. After all, there's still a 1/3 chance of getting a pair of cards. You just guessed it. There's nothing to be proud of. Yes, I guessed it. Fong Bujue replied frankly. Didn't I say that I was guessing? He shrugged. By the way, I guess that your next move will be the Avicii of Hell. What? Black Butterfly's heart was on the verge of exploding. If her opponent had said a pair of cards, it would have been fine. Her next move had a 25% chance of getting a pair of cards. However, Brother Ju said that she would get the Avicii of Hell. That was a 1 in 16 chance. You don't believe me? At this moment, Fong Bujue, who was obviously at a disadvantage, was fearless and arrogant. You can flip the cards if you don't believe me. At this point, no matter what her opponent said, Black Butterfly would definitely not flip the card she already knew. The move in front of his eyes was basically the move that would decide the outcome of the battle. If he flipped it, he would have a very high chance of scoring consecutive points and winning directly. If he couldn't flip it, he would give up the advantage, and there was an 80% chance that there wouldn't be a next round. I have to win. I have to win. I won't lose. Looking at the scattered cards on the table, Black Butterfly kept praying in her heart. God, if you exist, please bless me. No matter what, I have to get a pair of cards. Dilly-dallying? Are you praying to God in your heart? At this moment, Fong Bujue spoke again, revealing his opponent's thoughts. As for Black Butterfly, although she didn't reply, her startled reaction confirmed the other party's words. Ha! It's useless. Fong Bujue looked at her and said with a mocking smile, "There are no gods on the gambling table, only demons. When you flip the cards you didn't know in the previous round, you expose your inner wavering right under the demon's nose. From then on, your luck changed. The Avicii of Hell you flipped was a sign. If you had chosen to stake everything on one throw and flip 2 more unknown cards, you might have been able to salvage the situation. But you didn't. You flipped 2 known cards and flinched in front of the devil. So, the demon made a move on you. It made you flip a pair of cards in the first round. This was another sign. With your previous luck, it was impossible for you to not get a pair of cards with a probability of more than 50%. At this time, I was even more convinced that your luck had completely changed. It didn't matter if you flipped 2 more times. After all, you wouldn't get a pair of cards. So, I proposed a compromise that seemed unthinkable to ordinary people. Then, you accepted it, and just as I predicted, you flipped another pair of cards. Then, you were forced into a corner. Under the obviously unreasonable premise, you still question the judge about whether I cheated or not. You expose your stupidity, anger, and the weakness and helplessness under the cover of anger. At this point, you were already hopeless. The cry of prayer in your heart was a cry that announced that you had given up thinking and that you were powerless. It was a signal that led the demon to devour you. Fong Bujue's words were like a spell that sent chills down everyone's spine. Even the judge had goosebumps when he heard it. On the other hand, the host who heard the theory through the live broadcast showed an excited and fanatical smile. Nonsense. A few seconds later, Black Butterfly snapped out of her daze and responded to Brother Bujue with a scolding. The demon on the gambling table? What is that? Some kind of psychological cue? The guy who was talking about probability at the beginning is now talking about luck with certainty. It's simply absurd. After she finished her sentence, she grabbed a card and flipped it over. Fire, blood, evil spirit, mournful soul. The vivid and distinctive picture on the front of the card was imprinted in Black Butterfly's eyes. In that brief moment, she felt like she was there. The appearance of the Avicii Inferno announced the end of Black Butterfly's turn. In the end, she did not get a single card in the 3 consecutive hands. She even helped Fong Bujue get 2 pairs of cards and confirmed the position of a last held card. Why? When she put down the card, Black Butterfly felt her blood run cold. Why? How did you know? Let me emphasize, I didn't know, I was guessing. When Fong Bujue said that, he lowered his head to look at the hell card. This hand, actually, the chance of you flipping to 1 sign of clarity is higher, and you flipping to 1 sign of clarity will give me a bigger advantage, but I have a feeling that you will flip to Avicii of Hell. Because if I'm a devil, I'll also make you flip out the hell card. That way, it'll be even more symbolic and dramatic. Speaking of this, he stood up again and prepared to flip his last card in this round. Then, Fong Bujue reached out his hand and said leisurely, I won't hold back. Let's use this luck to clean up this mess. Chapter 1193. Triple Neurasthenia, Round 1 and Round 2. Black Butterfly, who had won the right to shuffle and lay out the cards, tried to regroup and chase after her score. However, after about 7 rounds, she experienced despair. The observation conclusion that Fong Bujue said he would explain to her in the 2nd round started to come into play. He sacrificed 10 rounds of scoring opportunities in exchange for this information, Black Butterfly's memory pattern. Obviously, in a game like Triple Neurasthenia, which required a high level of memory, it would be impossible if one did not employ a certain memory pattern and technique. Of course, Fong Bujue did not need to be mentioned. With his well-honed memory and his natural talent, he had reached a level where he could deal with any situation without the need to purposely apply a pattern. However, Black Butterfly was different. Even in the later stages of the game, she could only guarantee that she could remember 90% of the known cards, not all of them. In the early stages of the game, when there were still a lot of cards on the table, her memory accuracy was only about 70%. Fong Bujue gave up all the scoring opportunities in the first half of the first round because he wanted to see through his opponent's method. He kept flipping unknown cards to coordinate with his opponent's attack, so that he could infer the memory pattern his opponent used based on her every mistake, the sequence of cards she flipped, the interval between each card she remembered, and other signs. After 10 rounds, he saw through Black Butterfly's method and immediately came up with a set of interference strategies. Of course, he didn't use this strategy in the first round. After all, it was already the 11th round, and the number of unknown cards on the table had decreased by a lot. If he used this strategy in such a situation, it wouldn't be effective. In other words, Fong Bujue went into the first round with the mentality of even if he lost 1 round, he had to complete the observation. But in the end, he still won. Thus, in the 2nd round, when he started to use the strategy that targeted his opponent's memory pattern, the outcome became obvious. Even though Black Butterfly used the orderly arrangement method to increase the efficiency of his memory, that did not stop Brother Jew, who had seen through the pattern of his memory, from interfering with his memory. In the 2nd round, Brother Jew flipped 1 or 2 cards on his opponent's flop path from time to time and did not hesitate to steal points. The psychological burden of a loss in the last round, the absolute pressure on her spirit and momentum, the occasional trash talk, and the constant disruptive flops that targeted her memory pattern, all these things quickly defeated Black Butterfly. After just 10 rounds, Fong Bujue was leading his opponent by a large margin of 45-12, and there were already two known infernal hell on the table. In this situation, if Black Butterfly wanted to win, unless his opponent purposely flipped 3 hellish cards to commit suicide or his opponent did not score any points in the following rounds, there was no way he could win. When the opponent was Fong Bujue, the above assumption was impossible. In the end, after some struggle and hesitation, Black Butterfly, whose thoughts and emotions were in a mess, chose to surrender. Even though this meant that she would not be able to win the prize that was worth millions of dollars, at least she could take away the money she won in the number-guessing contest. After she got off the ship, she might be able to find a way to get out of this predicament with the money. Hold on. Just as Black Butterfly was about to leave the gambling table and return to the cabin to rest, suddenly a man in a suit and sunglasses blocked her way. "Is there anything else?" Black Butterfly replied weakly. "I'm very tired. I want to go back to rest, Mom." The man in the suit interrupted her and continued. "Our boss announced that you have advanced. You can stay for the next round." When Black Butterfly heard the word advanced, she was a little confused. After a few seconds, she asked in surprise, "What? Really?" Before she finished her sentence, she turned her head to look at the second floor of the main hall. At the same time, the host who was sitting there also raised his glass to her. This change made Black Butterfly overjoyed. It was as if someone who had been pushed off the cliff was pulled up again. For a moment, she did not know what to say. Then, the man in the suit turned his face again and said coldly to Brother Jew, "Sir, your qualification has been revoked." "Oh." When Fong Bujue heard the news, he was not too surprised. "Why?" "I don't know." The man in the suit was telling the truth. "You can ask our boss directly." As he spoke, he raised his arm and made a gesture to the second floor. "Please." 5 minutes later, on the first floor of the main hall, the triple neurasthenia duel was still in progress. However, the host and Fong Bujue had already left the cabin and came to a deck on the third floor of the cruise ship. At this time, the sea breeze was gentle and the night was dark. Two men sat opposite each other at a small square table and began to talk. "Can you adjust the light to the side? The lenses on my mask are not sunglasses." After Fong Bujue sat down, he made a request to the man in the suit standing next to him. The host heard this and chuckled. He then made a gesture to the man in the suit. When the man saw the boss's order, he quickly turned a deck light a few meters away by a dozen degrees to dim the light in the area. "Do you have any other requests?" A few seconds later, the host spoke to Brother Jew. "Yes, I want your prize." Fong Bujue replied in a matter-of-fact tone. You're really straightforward." The host smiled. "But the prize is prepared for my guests, but you don't seem to be on my invitation list." "Oh, so you found out after all?" Fong Bujue leaned back in his chair and replied lazily. "Yes, it's not difficult to find out. Who asked you to arouse my curiosity? I don't know how you managed to add the name Jiang Dao to my guest list, but I have to admit that your method is very clever." He threw the document on the table. The first page had a picture of Jiang Dao printed on it. "First of all, from the information, this Jiang Dao person does indeed meet the conditions of my invitation. It seems that the game company he runs has recently been found guilty of tax evasion and is also involved in some illegal drug experiments. Secondly, my men can't find any recent movements of Jiang Dao at all. I feel that he has become a missing person, but there are no relevant reports in the Public Security Department." He threw the document directly on the table, and the first page had a picture of Jiang Dao printed on it. "First of all, from the information, this Jiang Dao person situation does indeed meet the conditions of my invitation. It seems like the game company he runs has recently been found guilty of tax evasion and is also involved in some illegal drug experiments." At this point, he paused and said, "Of course, these are not problems now, because..." He looked up at Brother Jew. "You're not Jiang Dao." "Yes, I'm not." At this point, Brother Jew didn't have to deny this point. Even if he didn't look at his face, he could tell that his age didn't match just by looking at his body. Then, the host's voice turned cold. "Can you take off your mask and let me see? Who are you?" This was obviously not a request, but a request. Who am I? Feng Bujue was very cooperative. As he spoke, he raised his hands and started to unstrap his mask. Is it that important? Not necessarily, the host replied, but out of pure curiosity, I also want to see what you look like. Then I'm afraid you'll be disappointed. As he said this, Feng Bujue had already taken off his mask. However, he didn't reveal his face because, at this moment, his face was covered with a thick layer of white powder. His eye sockets were covered with dark eyeshadow, and his mouth and cheeks were painted with bright red lipstick. It was a thick, grinning smile. You? Even the host was stunned when he saw the face under the mask. What's wrong? Feng Bujue laughed. The smile on his face became even more exaggerated and strange as he laughed. Don't you like this kind of style? Hee hee. Come, smile with me. Why? So serious? Chapter 1194, November 30th, early morning. When Feng Bujue pushed open the door, he already knew that there was someone in the house. But he didn't make any excessive reactions. He just calmly changed his shoes, walked into the living room, and turned on the light switch. Did you forget to take something? Brother Ju looked at Ruoyu sitting on the sofa and asked in a slightly tired voice. No, Ruoyu only replied with 2 words and was ready to get up and leave. Don't you have anything else to say to me? Feng Bujue asked as he passed by. No. The same response, in the same cold tone. Then can you listen to me for a moment? Brother Ju said again. Ruoyu stopped in her tracks, but she didn't turn around. Go ahead. Let me confirm. Your seal hasn't been broken yet, right? Feng Bujue said. What do you think? Ruoyu didn't answer. Instead, she asked a question. Feng Bujue didn't answer either. He just chuckled and said, To be honest, I'm already annoyed. Annoyed about what? Ruoyu asked. All of this. Feng Bujue replied. I hate using the attitude of asking for help to mediate with those demons, and I don't want to listen to the advice of some old man. He paused. I have to admit, when it comes to relationships, I'm a little confused. This confusion makes me very angry, and it also made me do a lot of things that I would never do. He sighed. In the end, I did a lot, but it didn't solve any problems. Instead, it added more troubles. And the most difficult thing for me to accept is that you have become not like you, and I've become not like me. It seems, Ruoyu said, our troubles are very similar. At this point, the two were silent for a few seconds. Then I've decided, Feng Bujue continued, I won't try to undo the seal on your body anymore. I'll leave that kind of thing to you to decide and deal with. If you need my help, just let me know. If you don't need my help, then forget it. When she heard this, Ruoyu's mouth finally revealed a trace of a smile. Her eyes also revealed a gratified look. Thank you. You finally understand. Sorry to keep you waiting, Feng Bujue replied in a lazy tone. Then, let me confirm it again. Ruoyu turned around and continued. What's our relationship now? Our relationship? Feng Bujue deliberately dragged his voice and replied, Of course, it's still an abnormal boyfriend and girlfriend relationship. So what you're saying is, I'm as abnormal as you are? Ruoyu asked again. Yes. Brother Ju answered matter-of-factly. Phew. Ruoyu heard this and actually let out a sigh of relief. Hearing you say that, I'm relieved. Then, she took out her phone and quickly tapped on it. She extended her hand and handed it to Brother Ju. Feng Bujue didn't say anything. He just took the phone and looked at it directly. At this time, a text message was displayed on the screen. The sender was a string of very strange numbers. The content of the message was as follows: frowny face, Heroine Lee, hello. When you saw the first 3 words of this message, you must have already guessed my identity. So, I'll skip the self-introduction and get straight to the point. Tonight, Feng Bujue will be going somewhere to participate in a special banquet. The banquet's content is basically a group of desperate people gambling with the rest of their lives. It's not a big deal. Anyway, I've already reached an agreement with him. If he can win the game tonight and retrieve something that I need, I'll release your seal. So, I'm sending you a message first to let you know. If in the next few hours, you suddenly have a violent emotional fluctuation, That should be a sign that the seal is about to disappear. Of course, there's also the possibility that nothing will happen because I can't guarantee that Feng Bujue can win the game. I can't even guarantee that he can come back alive. But no matter what, I think it's better to let you know the situation. Hee hee. For some reason, Woody attached a pair of glasses to the message. It was full of complaints. This guy. Even text messages have to be he. After Feng Bujue finished reading the message, he muttered as he returned the phone to Ruo Yu. You don't seem that surprised by this news. When Ruo Yu took back the phone, she felt like Brother Ju's expression was a bit too calm. Of course, Feng Bujue replied. When I saw you sitting in the living room with a killer's face waiting for me, I already guessed that Woody had sold me out again. He spread out his hands. I didn't even tell Xiao Tan about my schedule last night. Only Woody could spread the news. For a guy like him who oozes malice, it's not surprising that he would play such a trick. Then, Ruo Yu said again, since the purpose of your trip was to make a deal with him, it means that you still wanted to break the seal when you went to meet him. But why did you change your attitude after seeing me? Is it because you failed in the game that Woody didn't break the seal, so you simply gave up? Of course not. Feng Bujue replied. The moment I saw you, I changed my mind. Or, I just figured it out. He paused for 2 seconds, and then revealed a rare, gentle smile. I can imagine you must have been very worried while you've been sitting here waiting for me. But when you saw me, you could only show me that expression, because you didn't know how to face me, and you didn't know what to say to me. The only thing you could do was to make sure that I was safe, and then leave quietly. He pursed his lips. You don't have to say this. I can understand and feel it. So at that moment, the only thought I had was, I don't want to see you in such a difficult position anymore. Feng Bujue's tone was very normal when he said this. He didn't show any emotional expression at all. He even gave people a casual feeling. But it showed that he was sincere when he said this. Indeed, he was a person with good acting skills. When necessary, he could act very well. But this was the real Feng Bujue. And on the other side, after hearing this, Ruo Yu was stunned. She didn't know what to do. After a while, she turned her back to Brother Ju and replied with an angry voice for no reason. Tisk. People these days, they say such things whenever they don't like it. I'm going back. Chapter 1195. On the 1st of December, the final version of Thriller Paradise V1. 50, Infinite World, was officially released. At midnight that day, the load on the server reached an unprecedented peak. More than 1 million people chose to log into the game at the first moment to experience the changes brought by the new version. But the few from Underworld Frontline did not join the fun. After all, they were not professional players, so they did not need to rush to level up. Furthermore, since they had already experienced most of the new features during the limited time period, they did not have the passion to do so. However, Feng Bujue still logged in on time. Furthermore, he was not there to play Thriller Paradise that night, but welcome to the login lobby. The following are all the games provided by the Dream Company. Please select the option to log in. This was the first time that Feng Bujue had selected the option to switch games in the login lobby. Before this, the only option on screen was Thriller Paradise, but now there was an additional option, and that was Crazy Thoughts. This game is for all ages. Have fun. Different from Thriller Paradise's scary login prompt, users above 16 are not recommended to come into contact with this game. The login prompt for Crazy Thoughts was more normal. After the voice prompt, the screen still showed the usual options of confirm login, cancel, and related disclaimers. Feng Bujue's habit did not change. He used 5 minutes to finish reading the long list of disclaimers that a normal person would not be able to finish in 20 minutes. Then he chose to log in. Instantly, a white, thick stream of data covered the ceiling of the elevator. Like a moving filter, it slowly scanned the entire elevator from top to bottom. About 10 seconds later, the scan was completed. The whole elevator, including Brother Ju style, had undergone a certain change. If Thriller Paradise's graphics were high-quality cinematic, Then Crazy Thoughts' graphics were a kind of imitation of 2D and retro 3D comic. Welcome to the world of Crazy Thoughts. The system has detected that you have purchased another product from our company, Thriller Paradise. Do you wish to use the appearance and IGN of your character from Thriller Paradise? After the conversion was completed, a voice notification sounded. At the same time, a dialog box appeared in front of Brother Jew. Phone Bujua chose yes, without much consideration. Confirmed. P.S. Players who use the character name Thriller Paradise will have a special symbol next to their nickname. After this line of text flashed, there were no more notifications. Phone Bujua turned his head to look. The buttons next to the elevator door that said Meeting Room and Storage Room had all disappeared. Now there was only one button next to the door, and it said Duel. It was a simple word with an exclamation mark. It didn't require much explanation, but anyone with the soul of a duelist would be ignited upon seeing this word. What will happen if I press it now? Brother Jew immediately tried pressing it. Please be prepared for the duel. The moment he pressed the button, the voice notification came. Fine. Phone Bujua shrugged and returned to the touchscreen. Many people might not believe it, but Crazy Thoughts' interface was much more complicated than Thriller Paradise's. The reason was because most of the game's content was done in the login lobby. For example, to buy things in Thriller Paradise, the player had to run to many places like NPC shops, auction houses, puzzle card trading centers, Thriller Box, and so on. There were many different types of transactions. In Crazy Thoughts, these things had to be done in front of the screen in the online shop. For example, Thriller Paradise's beginner's tutorial was given to the player in the form of a scenario. But Crazy Thoughts did not provide that kind of interactive tutorial. The game listed the rules directly and had the player flip through them. If they understood it, they would understand it. If they did not, they would understand it after losing a few rounds. After all, there were related hints during the actual game. Other than that, Crazy Thoughts mode and settings were too much. Even though the game had just started, it felt more mature than card games that had been in operation for many years. Let's talk about the game experience first. As everyone knew, for a PvP game like this, it was extremely important to avoid players who were too weak to be randomly matched. The Dream Company paid attention to this. Therefore, on the 25th of November, the day Crazy Thoughts was released, there was already a strength zone setting. Currently, version 1.0 mainly had 4 zones: beginner, advanced, expert, and expert. The system would use these 3 values to determine which zone the player should be assigned to. The 3 values were strength level, which was determined by the number of wins, win rate, win points, and hidden points; character level, which was increased through EXP; and the most direct, card strength level. Of course, the game also provided an indistinguishable zone for players to use. Next, let's talk about the gameplay. Other than the common 1v1, 2v2, and 3v3, there were also some modes that adopted special rules. For example, 1v2, 1v3, 3-person mixed battle, 3-person cycle battle, 4-person cross battle, single survival battle, 2-person survival battle, random card selection battle, mirror battle, both sides use the same deck of cards, and so on. In addition, there were many strange options for matching. The basic ones were random match, friend battle, and fixed table battle. The alternative ones were challenge match, concession match, give a specific concession condition before joining the queue, same age match, gender match, horoscope match, and so on. Finally, in terms of winning and losing, it could also be defined that in addition to the general winning and losing duel, there were additional betting on winning and losing, semi-banker bidding, and so on. In short, even though it was a card game, Crazy Thoughts still had the quality of a masterpiece. It adhered to the Dream Company's standard and revealed a sense of seriousness everywhere. Okay, let's see if that guy's here. After browsing before the screen for a while, Phone Bujua entered the indistinguishable zone and found a table called the Host and the Mad Crow in the block number 233. It was a password-protected table. So punctual. Brother Jew clicked on the name of the card table and entered a string of password 205551129. Then, he successfully logged into the card table. Chapter 1196. After entering the interface of the card table, the players at this table could communicate through typing or voice. Of course, they could also turn on the video chat function. Feng Bujue didn't hesitate much. He directly turned on the video and said to the screen, "I'm here." After a short silence, the user with the ID of organizer and a question mark on his avatar also turned on the voice chat. "It seems that you don't care about exposing your identity." "Oomph. That kind of thing has been exposed a long time ago, hasn't it?" Feng Bujue snorted coldly. "Oh, how do you know?" asked the organizer. "With the resources you have. As long as you take a cup or straw that I used on Solomon, you can find out who I am by relying on fingerprints and DNA. Feng Bujue replied. "And the first sentence you said just now was a confession without being pressed." "Huh." The organizer was startled when he heard this. "Oomph. Your reaction is so slow." Feng Bujue didn't give the other party any time to react. After a second, he continued, "Indeed, the appearance I am using now is my own appearance, and the name is also homophonic, but how did you know? That day on Solomon, what you saw was only the face of a clown and the name of a crow? However, at this moment, in this virtual game where one can adjust one's appearance, the first sentence you said to me after seeing me was you don't care about exposing your identity anymore? This is equivalent to telling me that the person you saw matches the identity you found out." Zhang Lixing nodded his head and looked at Zhang Lixing. He finished his speech quickly, causing the organizer to fall into silence again. After a while, the organizer also turned on the video chat function. Immediately afterward, a young face appeared on the screen. "Let's formally introduce ourselves." The organizer, who had a Chinese and European face, Brother Zhu judged that he was Asian from the skin color of his neck and hands when he was wearing a mask, said to Brother Zhu with a smile, "My name is Adolf Snow, a rich man who loves games." "Oh, hello." Brother Zhu responded weakly. "Since you should have checked my name, occupation, and so on, I won't repeat myself. If you want to call me an artist or a great writer, don't be shy. I can handle it." "Oomph. You are really as crazy as the internet says," Snow said. "Crazy, no jest." He deliberately said these 3 words word by word, as if he was implying something. Brother Zhu also understood the other party's implication. "So, your research on me did not stop at the level of files." "Yes." Snow did not deny it. "After I found out about your identity, I became more interested in you. So, I read the books you wrote, watched the TV shows you recorded, and found out a lot about what you did in Thriller Paradise through various channels." When he said this, his eyes were shining with excitement. "Oomph. To be honest, I'm really starting to like you more and more." You gay lines." Feng Bujue narrowed his eyes and complained. "It's easy for people to have that kind of misunderstanding." "It doesn't matter," Snow replied disapprovingly. "I've always been bisexual." "I see." Feng Bujue nodded. Then there was a very strange silence for a few seconds. "I already have a girlfriend," Brother Zhu said after a few seconds of silence. "Ha!" Snow laughed. "Don't worry, you're not my cup of tea." He paused for half a second and said again, "When I said like you, it was as an opponent in the game. There was no other meaning." "Why do I feel like you deliberately used those words that could be easily misunderstood to test my reaction?" Feng Bujue was really sharp. Snow heard that and was stunned again. After a few seconds, he said, Okay, you saw through me. I was originally thinking if the conversation went well, that kind of assumption no longer exists." Feng Bujue immediately interrupted him. "Say something else." Snow shrugged and laughed. "Oomph, that's fine." He thought about it again and said, "All right, about the topic of identity, I still have one thing that I don't understand." He then asked, "When we were on Solomon the day before yesterday, since you knew very well that no matter what, I would eventually find out your identity, then why did you put on such exaggerated clown makeup under the mask?" "Oh, that." Feng Bujue laughed. "That was an emergency measure I prepared to prevent someone from taking off my mask during the banquet or the game." He explained, "Of course, that kind of thing As the organizer, you and your subordinates wouldn't do it because you have the information of all the guests. Taking a step back, even if you suspected my identity, you would ask me to go out alone and let me take off my mask. He paused for a second and then changed the topic. But it's hard to say what will happen to the other guests. What if one of them gets angry and pulls off my mask when I'm not paying attention? Then my face will be seen by everyone around me. And this kind of situation is very troublesome. The people in the banquet hall that day were all upper-class people who had nowhere else to go. Many of them would still return to the shore after that night. Among them, as long as one of them recognized me, there would be endless trouble in the future. He actually has considered that level. Snow murmured after listening to what Feng Ning said. Isn't it natural to consider that level? Feng Bujue replied, impersonating someone else's identity, taking a ship registered in Panama, sailing to the high seas to participate in a game that is illegal no matter how you look at it. An itinerary like this, even if you end up being dismembered and buried in the sea, no one would find it strange, right? Brother Ju's words were a shock to Snow's thinking. This was an excellent example of different situations lead to different ways of thinking. People who went to explore the mountains with a full set of wilderness survival equipment, and people who were lost in the mountains empty-handed would think of things in a very different way. They might even be polar opposites. The things that Feng Bujue said, Snow would indeed think about it. In fact, in order to make the game more interesting, he often thought about the problems from the perspective of the prey. However, he couldn't think of Brother Ju's level. Phew! If possible, I really want you to come to me as a consultant, Snow said after a while. Sorry, I don't have plans to change careers, Feng Bujue said. I'll give you a truck of US dollars. How about you consider it? Perhaps it was a habit of Snow's. He almost blurted out the word truck as a unit of measurement for money. I can see that you're a person who doesn't take money seriously. Feng Bujue didn't answer him directly, but responded with a sentence. Why? Snow continued. You want to say, you too? Yes, me too, Feng Bujue said. Although they both didn't take money seriously, their natures were very different. One of them was super rich, and the other. Often, he would jump out and say, a gentleman is poor, but does not let his ambition fall. He really didn't have much money. Well, Snow sighed. I think I know your answer. At this point, his tone was a little cold. Then, Your Excellency, who is indifferent to fame and fortune, why did you come to today's appointment? Nonsense, because I want that thing, Feng Bujue replied. That thing, Snow snorted. Isn't it just money? Who said I'm going to sell it? Feng Bujue said. Didn't I tell you on the ship? I was entrusted by someone to get that thing. Just because you were entrusted, Snow continued. You went on a trip that you might not return from? Why not? Brother Bujue asked. In other words, Snow said again. Today, if you win against me and get that thing, you'll give it to the person who entrusted you without taking a single cent? That's between me and him, Feng Bujue said. You are here to play, aren't you? Snow laughed. Yes. Originally, I was just here to have fun. From the way he said this, it was obvious that he was about to say but Snow did not disappoint. Now I've changed my mind. No one want to team up. Feng Bujue's hooligan voice came out as he spoke, even his hometown dialect. Huh. Snow's smile deepened. Before this, we agreed that for this duel, my wager was that thing, and your wager was the hundreds of thousands of dollars you won from me. He did not remember how much Brother Ju had won the night before, so he said hundreds of thousands, right? What? You want me to raise the stakes? Feng Bujue said. Since you and I don't regard money as anything important, using it as a wager, isn't it too boring? Snow went with the flow. Don't you think it's a bit too much to make such a request when the duel is about to start? Feng Bujue naturally would not agree immediately. He was trying to fight for his own interests. Too much. Snow repeated those two words and laughed. You pretended to be my guest, sneaked onto my cruise ship, and used a fake identity to steal hundreds of thousands of dollars from my banquet. And I didn't throw you into the sea, nor did I take the money back. I didn't even detain you illegally to extort a confession. Now, you're saying that I've gone overboard? Well, when you put it that way, it seems to make sense. Feng Bujue touched his chin as if he had just understood and responded casually. Snow was also mentally prepared for Brother Ju's unscrupulous words and deeds. He suppressed his desire to complain and went on to the previous topic. In short, what I mean is that the wager on my side remains unchanged. No, I can even take a step back and give the hundreds of thousands to you. But the wager on your side, if I lose, I have to be your consultant, right? Feng Bujue asked. Oh, exactly. Snow was not surprised that his brother Ju directly gave the answer. Sigh, I knew it. Feng Bujue said, it's not about money. It's about people. If you agree to this condition, we can start. When Snow heard that there was hope, he hurriedly urged him to make a decision quickly. Well, let's bet. Feng Bujue did not hesitate. But this is a verbal agreement. Do you trust me? Of course, Snow said. Didn't you also believe that I will give you the things after I lose without any guarantee of contract? Feng Bujue smiled and said, you flatter me. That's because when we reached the agreement, it was on Solomon at that time. After Brother Ju took off his mask, I didn't even have room to question. That's okay. In short, I believe that you will keep your promise, Snow said. Snow said, because the opponent I recognize must be a man who can win and can also afford to lose. 20 minutes later, your deck is ready. After confirming the selection of the deck, Feng Bujue turned around and faced the elevator door. Beep! When Feng Bujue pressed the dual button, the elevator door opened with a buzzing sound. Outside the door, there was an arched stone corridor. The corridor was made of white stones and was quite spacious. More than 10 meters in front of it, there was an exit. The scorching sun had already shone in from outside the exit. Please choose your dual equipment. The moment he stepped out of the elevator, the system voice sounded again. In the next second, a window popped up in front of Brother Ju. There were only two options in the window, dual console and dual disc. Feng Bujue chose the dual disc without thinking and pressed the confirm button. In an instant, the stream of data burst out of thin air and turned into a ball of white light that wrapped around his arm. 3 seconds later, the white light condensed and gradually dimmed. A device with a blue base, white frame, and red axis, like a folded mechanical wing, had already appeared on Brother Ju's left forearm. It has been detected that your dominant hand is right-handed. The dual disc is installed on your left hand by default. If you want to change the settings, please return to the login space settings. Your dual disc is DD dual_disc, standard type. For more cool skins, please go to the online store to get them. During the process of the dual disc journey, these 2 lines of subtitles with voice messages also flashed in front of Brother Ju. What's the use of being cool? Can it increase the probability of getting a lucky draw? Feng Bujue looked at the advertising prompt that floated by and secretly complained. At this time, he had already reached the end of the arched stone corridor. When he stepped out of the stone door, his eyes suddenly opened up. The dual arena that he had chosen on the card table, the ancient Roman Colosseum, came into view in front of Brother Ju. At the same time, from the stone door opposite him, another duelist who was also equipped with a dual disc walked out. It was Adolf Snow. When the two of them were in their respective positions, there was a cursor on the ground to indicate the duelist's standing area, and stood in the huge circular arena. A new system voice sounded. This time, it was not a prompt, but a broadcast that directly sounded in the arena, only to hear a very hot-blooded male voice announcing, "Adhere to the rules and etiquette. Have a happy duel." Chapter 1197. That dual disc of yours is pretty cool. After getting into position, Feng Bujue stared at Snow's dual disc. Unlike Brother Ju's dual disc, Snow's dual disc looked like a crystal skeleton. It was quite eye-catching in terms of its shape, material, and color. Oh, about this, when I was waiting for you, I was bored and strolled around the online shopping mall. Snow replied in a very casual tone. Then I bought some skins or something. As he spoke, he deliberately raised the dual disc for Snow to see. This dual disc is called DD Deathbones. It goes with the Ice Dragon skin. My taste isn't bad, right? It's okay. As Feng Bujua spoke, he also raised his dual disc. My DD standard, shirtless version is also quite sharp. When Snow heard that, he did not dare to answer at that time. Although he also wanted to complain, isn't this the default configuration? He already faintly felt a trace of resentment from Snow's words. Therefore, the quick-witted Snow quickly changed the topic and said that, anyway, the duel equipment has no impact on the fairness of the duel, so there's nothing to discuss. Let's not talk too much. Let's get started quickly. Oh, okay. Feng Bujue replied weakly. But in the next second, his expression suddenly became serious. Snow saw that and had the same reaction. Almost at the same second, the two of them looked at each other and shouted in unison, "Duel!" In the duel arena of Mad Thoughts, the actions of the players were judged by the declaration, and this duel was undoubtedly the signal that both sides had reached a consensus and were ready to officially start the duel. Squeak, squeak, ka, ka, ka. After the declaration, the dual disc on Feng Bujue's left arm was activated. After the mechanical wings unfolded, the shape of the dual disc looked like a blade mounted on the outside of the forearm. And on the other side, ping, gurgle, gurgle, accompanied by a sound effect similar to that of a killing move in a fighting game, as well as the sound of bones wriggling. Snow's dual plate also unfolded. The DD Death Blood Bones was deployed in a one-sided manner. Something that looked like the spine of a wild beast drew an arc from the side of the dual disc. At the same time, under the effect of the ice dragon skin, the dual disc would scatter some ice crystal fragments when it was activated, and it would emit a faint dragon's roar. TSK. Brother Ju snorted when he saw this scene. He looked at his opponent as if he wanted to bite him. Hey. Snow didn't say anything, but he was muttering in his heart, it's still resentment. This resentment is simply overwhelming. My turn. 2 seconds later, Feng Bujue, who was the first to attack, the two of them had completed the random order on the card table, declared the start of his turn. Then, he stretched out his hand and drew a card. Draw a card. According to the rules of crazy thinking, each player's turn could be subdivided into 6 stages. The beginning stage, the drawing stage, the main stage, the battle stage, the secondary stage, and the end stage. Therefore, Feng Bujue had to declare my turn and say the 2 words draw a card. If he didn't complete the declaration, then the system would treat his turn as if it hadn't begun and he hadn't entered the card drawing stage. In that case, some of the card effects that were triggered at the beginning of the turn wouldn't be triggered, and he wouldn't be able to draw the card from the card slot. Of course, not every stage required a declaration. Generally speaking, after the card drawing was completed, the player would enter the main stage by default, and after the battle was over, the player would enter the secondary stage by default. The declarations of these 2 stages were ambiguous. In summary, in the duel of crazy thinking, the 2 players undoubtedly had to repeat various declarations many times. In order to avoid suspicion of making up the word count, I won't write down the declaration of every turn of the 2 players in detail. Therefore, I'll specifically explain it here to avoid being misunderstood as me forgetting to write it down. After Feng Bujue finished drawing the cards, he looked at the 6 cards in his hand and thought for about 5 seconds. Then, in this first turn, he made a shocking move. At the cost of shuffling the 3 cards back into the deck, I activate a special spell from the cards in my hand. Director's Prophecy. As Brother Ju spoke, he had already played the card and covered it in the magic trap area of the dual disc. Then he skillfully put the 3 cards into the deck, and his dual disc completed the automatic shuffling process immediately. According to the special effect of Director's Prophecy, I can declare a card from my opponent's hand and force it into the game in this turn. If this card is a monster card without any special effects, it will be displayed and discarded in the graveyard. But if this card is an effect monster, magic, trap, or other effect cards, it will immediately trigger an opposite negative effect. The specific form of the effect will be calculated by the system. When Feng Bujue said this, the expression on Snow's face had become more unpleasant. Obviously, all the cards in his hand were effect cards. In the game, Crazy Thinking, Those kinds of monster cards without any special effects would rarely be added into the deck. Players who would use such cards would most likely use them because only such cards could be used. To put it bluntly, it meant that they did not have any money. Of course, the duel between Feng Bujue and Snow did not involve the combat power of the player's card pool. This was because they were playing a 1v1 duel with random card selection. That was, both sides would randomly draw 600 cards from their deck, and then choose 40 to 80 cards from the 600 cards they drew to form a deck. Although such a duel could not be said to be absolutely fair, it was already quite fair. No matter how bad one's luck was, it was impossible for there to be a situation where the opponent's 600 cards are all good cards, and my 600 cards are all trash. In short, in this deck of 600 to choose 40 cards, it was unlikely that Snow would choose a monster card without special effects. Therefore, what he was facing at this moment was a situation where he was bound to be hit. Then, after finishing his declaration, Feng Bujue looked at Snow and said, "I choose the one in the middle." Snow had not drawn a card yet, and the number of cards in his hand was exactly 5, so there was no dispute about which card was in the middle. After receiving Brother Jew's instructions, Snow glanced at the effect of the card and then played it resentfully. "My card is a monster card. Lamp Monster," Snow said to Brother Jew as he covered the card in the monster area of his dual disc. While he was talking, the system had also shown the image of the card in front of Brother Jew and generated a lamp monster in the middle of the arena. The flip special effect, the special effect that is triggered when the cover state is lifted, is to check the opponent's hand. Feng Bujue looked at the card's description and read, "Tisk, it's just so-so. I thought it would be the kind of effect that explodes 80% of the opponent's LP, that is, life points, when the opponent enters the field. How could there be such an unreasonable card?" Snow's mouth twitched a few times, and he replied, "If there really is such a card, the summoning cost should be more exaggerated than God." While they were talking, the system had also begun to process the magical effect of Director's Prophecy. The calculation of the inverse special effect has been completed. Now, a random card from the hand of the player organizer will be displayed, and all summoning rights such as normal, special, and fusion for the next round will be cancelled. After the system broadcast, the other card in Snow's hand, Bubble, was displayed in front of Brother Jew. "The effect of your card is really amazing." Snow said, "I always feel that the inverse effect is a bit too much. It has far exceeded the benefits that the positive effect of my card can bring." Bullsh *T. Feng Bujue heard this and immediately widened his eyes and shouted, "Do you know how to play? How can this be considered a loss?" After yelling, he used a tone as if he was lecturing Snow and said, "Look carefully. If I want to activate this card, first of all, I have to meet the condition of having 3 other cards in my hand. Secondly, I have to pay the price of shuffling the 3 cards back into the deck. If I don't draw this card in the first round when I have a lot of cards in my hand, there's a high probability that I won't be able to activate it at all. Even if I manage to activate it when I have 4 cards in my hand, I may fall into a passive position due to the lack of cards in my hand after activating it." He paused for half a second and said, "The most important thing is, the effect of this card depends on luck. What if the opponent happens to have a monster card with no special effects in his deck? Or what if I pull out a supermodel monster card that originally had a negative effect and instead let the opponent gain a positive benefit?" As he said this, he raised his finger and pointed at the table lamp monster on the field. "Finally, you said that the negative effect is serious because you think that losing the summoning right for the next round is an additional punishment that has nothing to do with the monster's own special effects, right? Huh. Then why don't you think about it? You have already summoned a monster for free in my turn. If the system doesn't restrict your summoning right, won't you be able to directly use this monster as a sacrifice to summon a superior monster in the next round? If not, your monster can still attack, right?" He suddenly said a lot of things as if he was teaching and roughly analyzed the risks that the Bureau Chief's prophecy could bring. Snow listened on the side and was stunned. He didn't know how to interrupt or respond. Although our host had a high IQ and was proficient in many card games, It was his first time coming into contact with crazy thinking, so it wasn't easy for him to refute. Okay, you're right. Snow felt that he couldn't argue with Brother Jew, so he quickly admitted defeat and said, "Your main stage isn't over yet. Please continue. I'll continue even if you don't tell me." At this moment, Feng Bujue's tone was a little aggressive. Speaking of the fuse, actually, it was because the opponent's dual plate was cooler than his. Some people might say, how could a person like Feng Bujue get angry over such a small matter? That's right, Brother Jew wasn't a narrow-minded person. In the face of many things that could make ordinary people angry, he could face it calmly. Because his thinking was too fast, when he encountered something, he would often skip the emotional part and go straight to the handling part. For the same thing, when ordinary people were still angry, Feng Bujue might have already thought of a solution and started to implement it. In his opinion, emotions were often unnecessary because emotions could only be used as a driving force or motivation, but they couldn't solve any problems by themselves. For example, cutting the queue. When the whole line saw someone cutting the queue, they were all angry, and then what happened? The person who cut the queue was still there. Anger didn't solve the problem. Only stopping him with words or beating him up could solve the problem. The former was the emotion, and the latter was the solution. Emotions were the motivation, and only actions could solve the problem. Feng Bujue tended to go straight to the latter, so he rarely got angry. But now, why was he angry? There was no reason. It could only be said that he also had a childish side. He wasn't like this when it came to major issues, but when it came to things that didn't matter to others, he would be all kinds of unhappy. I'll throw a card into the graveyard as the price. Special summon. Sword-wielding deceiver. Attack. Feng Bujue's main stage was still continuing. He once again activated a card with a negative effect and summoned a powerful monster. As soon as the words left his mouth, a humanoid creature with a long sword, a long cloak, and a wide-brimmed hat with his face hidden in the shadows appeared in the arena. He stood opposite Snow's lamp monster. This sword-wielding deceiver was a monster that couldn't be summoned normally. It could only be summoned with a price. Generally speaking, this kind of monster that was specially summoned either had high attack and defense, or it had some kind of special effect. Obviously, the sword-wielding deceiver belonged to the latter. Its special effect was, when the sword-wielding deceiver fights with any monster, its attack power will be determined by rolling a die. The number of dice depends on the total number of monsters in the opponent's field. For example, in the next round, when Snow only had one monster in his field, he would use the table lamp monster to attack the sword-wielding deceiver. Then, the latter's attack power would be determined by one die, 1 to 6. The number of dice multiplied by 1,000 would be the deceiver's attack power. Considering that the table lamp monster's attack power was 1,500, when Feng Bujue's deceiver was attacked, as long as it rolled more than 2, it would be able to win. After summoning the sword-wielding deceiver, Feng Bujue immediately announced the end of the round. The first attacker can attack in the first round, unless there's a special effect that preempts the attack. So, I'll end this round. After this short round, Brother Jew's hand was empty. He played 2 cards, washed 3 cards, and threw 1 card into the graveyard, just enough to use up all 6 cards. And the moment he heard the end of the round, the corner of Snow's mouth revealed a smile. Chapter 1198. You're indeed a real gambler. Before the round began, Snow spoke first. Even when playing card games, it's in this style. Card game? Upon hearing that, Feng Bujue repeated those 4 words. Then, his expression and tone became very gloomy. Do you look down on duel? Ha! What duel? It's just a name, isn't it? Snow laughed. To put it bluntly, this is just a card battle game, isn't it? If you want to play cards, just play cards. Using the name duel, don't you think it's too childish? As soon as he finished speaking, Feng Bujue was silent for a moment. Then, his expression became serious, and he spoke again. I see. So that's what you think. What's wrong with that? Snow asked. When you've suffered a crushing defeat, you'll naturally understand where you've gone wrong. As Feng Bujue spoke, he waved his arm and pointed at his opponent. He shouted loudly, "As a duelist, it's my duty, obligation, and destiny to defeat a piece of trash like you who doesn't even know what a duel is and is still spouting nonsense there. You actually call me a piece of trash." At this moment, Snow's expression changed. Those two words seemed to have touched his reverse scale, causing him to be enraged. "I did." Feng Bujue raised his tone. "What about it?" "Umph. The ignorant are really fearless," Snow sneered. "From the way you played all the cards in your hand in the first round, I can tell that you're a layman. Anyone who knows a little about card games would know that such an opening. It's as if you're saying, 'I'm ready to be slaughtered.'" He spread out his hands and said provocatively, "Forgive me for being blunt, but with your level of skill, you'll be defeated in 5 or 6 rounds, and you still dare to spout nonsense there. It's really ridiculous. A fellow who's not even a duelist. Is he worthy of mocking my level?" When Feng Bujue heard that the other party dared to talk back to him, he laughed. "Judging from your tone, you actually think that you played well? Are you still talking about duelists?" Snow shook his head and replied helplessly, "All right, let me find you a Chinibu to talk about some basic concepts." He paused and continued. "The duel skills in card games are nothing more than some simple calculations and a little bit of luck. The real factor that determines a player's strength is the depth of their card pool and their ability to build a deck of cards. To put it bluntly, when the deck is formed before your so-called duel begins, 70% of the outcome is already determined. The remaining 30% is 20% improvisation and 10% luck." At this point, he paused and said, This is reality. In reality, it's extremely difficult for those who don't even have a complete set of cards to win against those players who have a strong deck of cards. The more complete the rules of a card game are, the more impossible it is for this to happen. As for the saying of duel, in my opinion, it's like saying mahjong is card fighting or cucumber mixing is cooking. It's simply ridiculous. "Umph." Feng Bujue snorted coldly and continued. "Looks like our concepts are worlds apart. I also know that it's very difficult to change other people's views with words alone." After Snow replied, he also snorted coldly. "Umph. I'll use victory to make you understand." After saying that, he also raised the duel plate and drew a card. "My turn, draw a card." Snow picked up the card that he had just drawn, glanced at it, and then he directly played it. "Activate the field magic, hypoxia zone." As he placed the card on the trap magic area of the duel plate, the system's animation also began. The center of the arena was instantly shrouded by a dark and invisible force field. After a few seconds, Feng Bujue's sword-holding deceiver on the arena groaned and knelt on one knee. When the hypoxia zone is on the field, all humanoid, and animal-type monsters cannot be used as a barrier for the players during the battle stage. Snow continued. "Oh, you want to bypass the monsters and directly reduce my LP?" Feng Bujue said calmly. "It's okay, do whatever you want. Things like blood exist for people to cut." Snow did not respond to his words. Instead, he continued, "Enter the battle stage. Lamp monster, directly attack the players." As soon as the announcement was made, the lamp monster moved. It bypassed Brother Jew's sword-holding deceiver on the arena and directly pounced on the players. To be clear, in Mad Thoughts, when the players themselves are attacked, they will feel pain. The degree of pain will vary according to the degree of damage and the form of damage. Of course, the pain limit in Mad Thoughts is very low, and there will not be overly gory scenes. After all, this is a game for all ages. Compared to Thriller Paradise, it is still quite harmonious. Bang! In the blink of an eye, the lamp monster swiftly launched a charge at Feng Bujue. Brother Jew just stood where he was and raised the duel plate to block it slightly. After blocking it, he even said in a disdainful tone, "Tiske, tiske. It really doesn't hurt at all. It seems that because you look down on duels, even the monsters you control are not interested in fighting." "Umph. I really don't understand how the holographic image feels," Snow said with a sarcastic tone. Snow replied in a sarcastic tone. However, I can explain why you don't feel any pain. It's because the pain limit in this game is already at this level. While the two of them were conversing, the damage calculation of Feng Bujua's LP, which was displayed above the card slot of the dual plate, was completed. After deducting the 1,500 points from the battle earlier, there were still 6,500 points left. Then, finally, I will put 2 cards on it. After the battle stage, it was time for the secondary stage. As Snow spoke, he put 2 of the 4 cards in his hand on the trap magic area. In this round, my turn. Before the other party finished speaking, Feng Bujue already could not wait any longer. With an imposing manner, he shouted, "Draw the card." His drawing of the card was not a normal drawing of the card. He took a step forward, leaned forward slightly, and pinched the card with 2 fingers. When he pulled the card out, he even flung his whole arm to the side in a very exaggerated manner. This kind of "I'm proud of my posture" behavior really surprised Snow. "What are you doing?" Snow could not help but ask. "Drawing the card," Feng Bujue replied. "I'm asking you, why did you draw the card like that?" Snow asked again. "Can't you draw the card in a normal way?" "A normal way? Do you mean the way you drew the beep?" Feng Bujue's words were blocked by the system because there was a sensitive word in them. "Let's not talk about how my drawing a card from the top of the deck action is." Snow replied, "Let's talk about your posture, which you think is very cool. Could it be that you can control what kind of card you draw?" "Not necessarily," Feng Bujue replied. "Not necessarily?" Snow seemed to be very surprised by his brother Ju's answer. "Huh." He laughed dryly and said again, "That is to say, you really believe that there is a certain possibility?" "Of course I do." Feng Bujue did not laugh. He replied very seriously, "As a duelist, you have to believe in your own deck. Only then will the deck respond to you and help you win." Having said that, he did not wait for Snow's response. He just glanced at the card he had drawn and then placed it on the duel board. "I'll abandon all other cards in my hand as the price. Special summon Sakamoto Kuin." After Feng Bujue finished his declaration, a tall, good-looking teenager wearing a black high school uniform, black-rimmed glasses, and a tear mole at the corner of his eye appeared in the arena. "What?" In the face of Brother Ju's amazing draw, Snow was shocked again. "You just had to draw a special summon monster at the cost of abandoning all the cards in your hand when you have no cards in your hand? There's nothing strange about it." Feng Bujue replied in a matter-of-fact tone. "For a duelist, every card is a partner with their soul. Isn't it normal for partners to step forward at the right time?" As he said that, he took a step forward, raised his head, and ordered, "Enter the battle stage. Sakamoto Kuin. Attack the desk lamp monster. Activate the trap card." When Brother Ju shouted out the order to attack, Snow also made his move. Demon's Awareness. When the trap card was activated, Sakamoto Kuin just happened to glide in front of the desk lamp monster in a dashing manner. Just as the former was about to make an attack, the latter was 1 step ahead. It turned into a white light and disappeared. The effect of Demon's Awareness is, Snow said at this time, when one of our side's Demon Clan monsters is attacked, it can be used as a sacrifice to specially summon a 6-star Demon Clan monster from the deck. It will also be placed in the field as a side attack. Just as Snow was speaking, the holographic projection of his deck had already appeared in front of his eyes. Of course, this set of projections was perpendicular to the ground and had its back facing Feng Bujue. Brother Ju definitely could not see it. "I choose." Snow stared at the set of projections that were slowly scrolling up like subtitles for a while. Not long after, he reached out his finger and pointed at one of them. 8-armed snake monster. After he finished speaking, a card directly teleported from his deck to his dual plate. On the field, there was also a burst of white light. A rather large monster broke through the light and stood at the position where the desk lamp monster was standing just now. As expected of a monster that needed a sacrifice, the 8-armed snake monster. S appearance was much stronger than the previous desk lamp monster. It had a huge snake tail, a human upper body, and 8 thick arms. It made its 2,200 attack power seem very convincing. Moreover, The 8-armed snake monster also had the special effect of summoning a python monster that will attack from the front after being destroyed. Although the latter was only a 2-star monster, it could still be used as a sacrifice. 2,200? It's nothing. Feng Bujue saw that his opponent had summoned a big monster, but he did not panic. However, because Sakamoto's attack power was 2,000, it was not enough to kill the 8-armed snake monster. So, he could only take a gamble here. Just now, your trap made Sakamoto-kun's attack target disappear, so the attack was interrupted, but he still has the right to attack in this round. Now, as long as I use the deceiver to kill your snake monster, and then use Sakamoto-kun to kill the python monster, I can still beat you until you vomit blood. That assumption has to be based on the situation where you roll more than 3 attack points for this sword-wielding deceiver, Snow said with a smile. Snow laughed. But what if you roll a 1 or 2? As a result, your deceiver is killed, and you have to further lose LP points. This situation will be ugly. Nonsense. Why don't you say that if I roll a 6, I can directly make you half dead? At this moment, Feng Bujue's momentum could be said to be strong and domineering. For some reason, when he wore the duel token and stood on the dueling ground, it was as if he had changed into another person. Every word and action of his was filled with the spirit of staking everything on a single throw. Every action and action of his showed that he had completely thrown himself into Chinibu, and that he had completely thrown away his calm calculations and plans and other similar things to the back of his mind. Sword-wielding deceiver, attack, 8-armed snake monster, illusory sword flower. After Feng Bujue refuted Snow's words, he quickly issued an attack declaration. Not only did he say an attack declaration, but he also reported the names of the moves used by the monsters when they attacked. In fact, he really did not report it blindly. In the official Crazy Thinking database, there was a detailed introduction of each card, and the most detailed settings were basically monster cards. There was so much content that it could be read as a novel. Among them, there was also a clear description of the moves used by each monster when they attacked. Feng Bujue's reading addiction naturally would not let go of such content. Long before Crazy Thinking was launched, he had already read all the information of all the cards. Therefore, the name he reported at this time was indeed the name of the monster's move. It was just that, technically speaking, there was no difference whether he reported it or not. The power of the attack, judgment, result, and so on, there would not be any change because he reported the name of the move. Swish, 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 swish. In an instant, this sword-wielding deceiver pulled out his sword from his waist and rushed up. While he waved his sword, a holographic image of a dice the size of a basketball also appeared in the air above the arena. Beep, beep, beep. The image changed quickly and made a rapid buzzing sound. Finally, it stopped at the number 3. The moment the number stopped, the sword-wielding deceiver shouted and stabbed with his sword. Obviously, after the system's calculation was completed, a real-time CG of a monster with an attack of 3,000 killing a monster with an attack of 2,200 was about to be played. However, equipment trap, activate. Snow's declaration interrupted the scene. Chapter 1199. What Snow activated was his second trump card, Hiltless Sword. When this card was equipped on a monster, it could increase its attack by 1,000 points, but its controller would lose 300 LP at the beginning of each turn. Previously, in Snow's own turn, he could actually use this card. As long as he activated this card in the main stage, then during the battle stage, he could equip it on the table monster and reduce Brother Jew's LP by 1,000 points. However, he was useless, and just now, when Feng Bujue used Sakamoto-kun to attack the table monster, Snow could also activate this card to deal with it. But he was still useless, because he was very clear. The most threatening card to him at the moment was Sword-Wielding Deceiver. The potential of this card was very terrifying. Snow would rather lose 1,000 LP and give up the opportunity to kill a monster in return, so that he could keep the hiltless sword and activate it at a time when he could actually eliminate the sword-wielding deceiver. If he had used this card to kill the opponent's Sakamoto-kun or to reduce the opponent's HP, then he would have fallen into a very awkward situation. That was, when this sword-wielding deceiver attacked him, there would be a table monster with 2,500 attack standing on the field. In this case, first of all, Demon's Awareness would become a useless trump card. If he activated it, the summoned monster's attack might not be as high as the monster on the field. If he did not activate it, then this card would be useless. If the table monster was killed later, he would not be able to activate it even if he wanted to. Secondly, in that situation, the initiative was completely in the hands of Feng Bujue. He could use this sword-wielding deceiver to attack the table monster equipped with the hiltless sword. There was a 2/3 chance of winning. He could also choose not to attack and lose another round of HP. In this way, in the next round, unless Snow brought up a monster with 4,000 attack to kill Feng Bujue while keeping the existing monsters, otherwise, as long as Snow summoned a monster, then the sword-wielding deceiver's attack dice would increase by 1. In theory, that might be an increase of 6,000 attack points. Just think about it. During the round after Brother Ju had sold all his life points, if he was lucky enough to roll 2 6s during the battle phase and deal 12,000 damage to the lamp monster, monsters that have been attacked during the battle phase cannot be changed to defend during the secondary phase. Then the 9,500 points difference will be deducted from Snow's LP, and the result would be a one-hit kill. Although the probability was very small, it was not 0. Taking a step back, even if he did not roll 12 points, taking the average, it would still be 6,000 to 7,000 attack points. Not to mention, Feng Bujue would also draw cards in the next round. Who knew what else was in his deck? Snow's way of thinking and style of card games was based on the foundation of absolute rational thinking. Even if his luck had always been good, he would not take unnecessary risks. He would try his best to avoid and bypass choices like, after one move, there is a 1/3 chance of gaining an advantage and a 2/3 chance of losing. His philosophy was to fight steadily and gradually crush. He would establish an advantage in the 3 aspects of the field, HP, and card difference. He would use the difference in strength to make the opponent gradually fall into despair and eventually lose. Therefore, after many deductions, Snow chose to endure and wait until the moment when he was sure that he could achieve his goal. Then he activated the hiltless sword. What a pity! While Snow spoke, a huge sword that had blades all over its body appeared in the 8-armed snake demon's hand. The latter held the sword and slashed down, cutting the sword-holding deceiver into 2 halves. The sword-holding deceiver was cut into a burst of white light. If you roll 4, 5, or 6, then I can't do anything about it. You deliberately waited for this moment to activate it? Feng Bujue muttered. Of course, Snow replied. I was waiting for your attack declaration to be completed, and when the deceiver's attack points are generated randomly, then I would activate this equipment trap according to the situation. This is the only way to ensure that we can get rid of that troublesome monster. Asterisk beep beep beep. Asterisk, just as the 2 of them were talking, with the death of the sword-holding deceiver, another die appeared in mid-air. After a burst of buzzing, it was fixed on the number 3. Then a white light shot out from the die image and blasted on Feng Bujue's body. This scene was caused by the negative effect caused by the death of the sword-holding deceiver. That was, roll a die and cause the controller to lose the corresponding amount of LP. And 3 meant a total of 3,000 LP. Including the difference in attack points caused by the previous battle with the 8-armed snake demon. In this round of confrontation, Feng Bujue not only died a monster, but also lost 3,200 HP. It could be said that he suffered a heavy loss. It's still 3? I thought there would be a result of 6 or something, Snow said with a smile when he saw the situation. Fortunately, that's enough. His eyes showed a proud look. You now only have 3,300 LP left, and the Sakamoto-kun on your field is a humanoid creature. Under the influence of the hypoxia zone, he can't be your shield. In other words, when it's my turn, as long as I could draw a monster card and cooperate with the 8-armed snake demon on the field with 3,200 attack, I can send you on your way. He spread out his hands, shook his head, and sighed hypocritically. Sigh, it seems that I only need 2 rounds to win. But, against a layman, this can be considered an expected outcome. Snow assumed a victorious posture. His sarcastic remarks were endless, and they were reasonable and well-founded. However, are you done? Feng Bujue's face did not show the slightest expression that he was about to lose. His eyes were still very firm. Then, I'm going to continue. He paused for half a second, and there was a hint of a smile at the corner of his mouth. My battle stage is not over yet, what? Snow's expression changed slightly. Are you kidding me? Don't tell me you still want to use your 2,000 attack high school student on the field to launch an attack on my 3,200 attack snake demon? Sakamoto-kun's special effect. Activate. In the next second, Feng Bujue made a declaration. Sakamoto-kun's special effect was that at any stage of the player's turn, when the opponent has at least 1 card in his hand, the player can guess the card once. If the player can guess the type of all the cards in the opponent's hand, the opponent has to abandon all the cards in his hand, and for every card abandoned, Sakamoto-kun's attack will increase by 1,000 points. This effect can only be activated once, and it cannot be activated again after a failure. You rascal, are you going to gamble again? After Snow heard the declaration, his face finally darkened. This is not a gamble, Feng Bujue said. You have already told me the types of the 2 cards in your hand, haven't you? As soon as he said that, Snow's face clearly showed a horrified expression, and he could not help but blurt out, Oh no. Your acting is not bad. And Feng Bujue was staring at him with his dead fish eyes and sneering. From complacency to hesitation and then to panic. It's generally acting, Unfortunately, it's not good enough. After saying that, he pointed at Snow and said, The 2 cards in your hand are Magic Card and Monster Card. When his voice fell, Snow's expression froze. At this moment, he was really shocked. He was shocked by the other party's action of guessing the Monster Card. After a full 5 seconds, he spoke again in a cold tone. How did you guess? Oh, it's very simple, Feng Bujue replied with a smile. When the reversal effect of the director's prophecy was generated, you were already exposed. He paused and said, You probably don't know it yourself. When the system broadcast said, randomly displaying a card from the hand of the player's organizer, your gaze naturally fell on the card in your hand. And 1 second later, halfway through the sentence, canceling all summoning rights of the player for the next turn, your gaze subconsciously moved to the card on the left side of your hand at this moment. Just based on this, can you be sure that it's a monster card? Snow immediately asked. That could also be some kind of magic or trap related to summoning. You're right. Just based on that glance, I'm about 60 to 70% sure. Feng Bujue smiled and said, What really made me certain that it's a monster card was what you said just now. Wait for my turn as long as I can draw a monster card. Tisk. Am I overreacting? At this point, Snow already knew where his problem was, so he spoke angrily. Yes, that line that seemed to be shouting, I don't have a monster card in my hand, coupled with your exaggerated acting skills, it's simply a confession without being pressed. Feng Bujue continued, Obviously, you're not the kind of person who doesn't look at the description of the opponent's card during a duel. When the negative effect after the death of this sword-wielding deceiver took effect, you didn't show any surprise at all. It can be seen that you've looked at and remembered the special effects of this card very carefully. Therefore, what the special effects of Sakamoto-kun are, presumably, the moment Sakamoto-kun appeared, you were already prepared to mislead me. So, you showed me that performance just now. As he spoke, Brother Ju imitated what Snow did just now. He spread out his hands, shook his head, and sighed. Forgive me for being blunt, but with your superficial acting skills, there's still a lot of room for improvement. Although the control of your facial muscles is still quite good, your careless gaze, deliberate tone, and completely forgotten body language, You won't be able to pass the test in front of a real swindler. Feng Bujue's words, in a way, had already placed himself in the camp of swindlers and thieves, but from the expression on his face when he said that, he did not appear to have any moral barriers to that. In summary, apart from the field magic that you cast in the last round and the 2 traps on the field, the remaining 2 cards in your hand, in my opinion, are no different from the ones in the open. After pausing for 2 seconds, Feng Bujue concluded in a concluding tone. One of them is the magic card bubble that I've already seen in the first round. You know very well that I'll definitely guess this card, so you're trying your best to hide the fact that the other card is a monster card. Phew! When Snow heard this, he let out a long sigh and quickly regained his usual confident and arrogant look. Good. Wonderful. Amazing. He used 3 words in a row to praise Brother Jew and conveniently stuffed the 2 cards in his hand into the graveyard card slot of the dual disc. You're indeed the man that I fancy. Snow's psychological quality was excellent, and he quickly regained his composure. For a few minutes just now, I thought that your plan was to deliberately act like a retard so that I would give up on asking you to be my consultant. Now it seems that you were indeed pretending? Pretending? Pretending for what? Feng Bujue raised his head and said bluntly. He once again waved his arm in an imposing manner and shouted, "When standing on the stage of a duel, I won't pretend to be myself." Snow saw this Chinibu performance and was really confused. He thought to himself, an unpredictable man. Is this the legendary setting of a crazy Chinibu with super high IQ? Well, actually, it's pretty cool when I think about it. Okay, back to the topic. The special effect of Sakamoto-kun has been successfully activated. Feng Bujue didn't give him a chance to speak further. Go! Secret skill, left and right horizontal jump. Following Brother Jew's declaration, Sakamoto-kun really jumped left and right on the field, creating shadows. His attack power rose to 4,000 points as a result. Sakamoto-kun attacked the 8-armed snake demon. Feng Bujue's attack declaration followed. Secret skill, neat impact. After this shout, Sakamoto-kun flashed behind the 8-armed snake demon as if he had teleported. His body was only half a step away from the snake demon, almost sticking to the curve of the snake demon's back. Then, Sakamoto-kun leaned back with his hands on the outside of his thighs, bent his knees forward, and used all his strength to push. Hey, what kind of monsters is this guy using? What kind of weird attack method is this? Can he really complete the kill? Seeing this scene, Snow couldn't help but complain in his mind. But the reality was that the 8-armed snake demon swayed and lost its balance under the opponent's push. It fell to the ground in a very bad position and fell on the giant's sword in its hand. It was pierced through. A second later, with a bang, it turned into white light and collapsed. DDDD. The sound effects on the dual plate reminded Snow that his LP had decreased by 800 points because of this battle. At this point, Feng Bujue's second round ended. Both sides had no cards in their hands. Brother Jew's field had a monster with 4,000 points of attack and 0 cover cards. As for Snow, even the arena was empty. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.